convincing story that maps onto reality, and that's why the central narrative is falling apart.
Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks.
We must see the central narrative for the fiction that it is. We are Americans.
While elections are sometimes messy, this was a secure election.
The founders began the fight for human liberty and self-governance, and it's up to us to finish the job.
I tell you what, we are in a truth emergency right now.
This is the end game.
All the people that have gone out there against the mainstream media and said, you're going to call us racist, you're going to call us potential Timothy McVeighs, fuck you. War.
Seductive. Quite sure he's right. An obsessionally neurotic. Pretty dangerous, in fact.
Do you mean you doubt your powers to convince him?
Worse than that. What I'm afraid of is his power to convince me.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
Say it! Say it!
All right, I'll say it.
We're talking about putting a manifestly irresponsible man on national television.
Sweetheart, be reasonable.
All right, it is Friday, January 24th, 2025, the fifth day of the new golden age, as promised by the one and only President Donald J. Trump, now serving his third term as president. And we're going to get into that in just a second. It occurs to me to remind people about the merch site. There are people who watch the show regularly and are like, why don't you tell people about your stuff and where to find you? And I am extremely adverse to self-promotion as a result of having spent a whole lot of time in Hollywood, catering to and curating my image all the time. And so I kind of like to let people get to where they're going on their own. But people occasionally will ask about this hat or about the Freeman hat and some of the other merch. So I want to share some of that with you guys. My friend Adrian over at Rise Attire, who makes who designs a bunch of merch for a lot of people in the truth community. He did all the Badlands merch and the designs, you see the new Devolution graphic and the rest of it. So he has this store over at riseattire.usa/INTL. So it's the Rise International, Rise INTL part. And then he's got the podcast logo stuff on that page over there. You can find that in the show notes. And you can also find my old school merch site in the show notes as well. This has some of those designs with, different merch options like trucker hats and stuff. He's got some of that. I've got some other stuff. This is the opt-out graphic that I have right here. The tired ghost who's sick of ops, Reality Prime, the cancel couture graphic. There's like stickers and stuff of that. Okay, commie, see you in the gulags. The original You Sound Vaccinated stuff. I Heart Anons, and then the Free Man. And you can just keep going. This is all the designs way back from the beginning. So you can just go to cancelcouture.com to find that, or cancelcouture.myspreadshop.com. And both of those are good ways to support the show if that's something you want to do. Not only because, I make a few bucks on it, but because that stuff kind of gets conversations started out there in the real world. I know that this hat and Freeman have been fun to talk about, and hearing people's experiences with the You Sound Vaccinated merch was always a good time. Okay, so let's get into some of what's been going on these past couple of days. I was going to go live yesterday around the normal time because I thought that the World Economic Forum speech was so great. And then there were those articles from the New York Times about Trump's executive order naming cartels terrorist organizations and what the fallout from that was going to be. And so I was about to do that yesterday. And then all the streaming platforms kind of in our space were waiting for Donald Trump to do the executive order signing in the Oval Office or wherever that all is coming from now. And I thought, okay, well, if I start a live stream, everybody's going to want to go watch the Trump thing. So I'm going to start my live stream and everybody's going to say, let's go live to Trump. And then I would end up doing that. And then my live stream would be the Trump thing. So I was like, okay, I'll wait until this is over. And then he started an hour past when he was supposed to, or maybe longer. So what are you going to do? The president is going to operate on his own schedule, as he should. So I ended up taking the rest of the day off yesterday. And it's weird for me to have day offs or days off. I'm going to have to do more of those. I'm trying to get back into writing and eventually like finish some books and I don't know, just divide my time differently. And this has been really great for that. But occasionally I'll be like, I got to get out there and talk about this stuff. This is fun. And I had to wait 24 hours. It got thrown off. All good. All right. So let's go to this. We'll knock this one out right off the bat. And then we're going to get into some of that Trump stuff. But Andy Ogles, the Tennessee Republican congressman, yesterday proposed a constitutional amendment to allow Donald Trump to serve a third term. I just said a bit tongue-in-cheek a minute ago that Donald Trump was now serving in his third term. He has been elected 3 times. The man that people pretend served as president for 4 years, Joe Biden, was never elected and did not serve as president. And as we'll see a little later on, and as I discussed on Badlands Daily this morning, there are major elements, major players throughout the rest of the world that never recognized Joe Biden as president. And at some point, we're going to have to account for what that means. And I think that everybody who watches this show with any regularity or has watched or listened to this show for any extended period of time, longer than a couple of months, will understand that we talked about that throughout. Joe Biden was never actually president. And I think that myself and maybe my Badlands compatriots and maybe some people that those of you out there might be aware of who I'm not aware of are really the only people who bothered analyzing everything that happened the last 4 years from a perspective other than the one pushed forward by the television. Okay. Everybody else just accepted that Joe Biden was president and treated Joe Biden like a real president who can do all the things real presidents can do, but Joe Biden was not that. And so Trump, having been elected now 3 times and serving in some capacity, this would be his third term serving in some capacity. Whatever it was that happened over the last 4 years, I cannot tell you to some level of certainty, but Donald Trump was heavily involved the entire time, literally meeting with world leaders at the Winter White House. And apparently that means nothing to people. Whatever. Andy Ogles proposed an amendment Thursday that says no person shall be elected to the office of the president more than 3 times, nor be elected to any additional term after being elected to 2 consecutive terms, and no person who has held the office of president or acted as president for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected president shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. And that last caveat there was something that, people discussed pretty regularly as the Biden pause period was reaching that 2-year mark, is Trump coming back in some capacity for this period, because then when he does that and then serves that third term, that will not supersede any of this. So, like other U.S. presidents, Trump is barred from running for a third White House term by the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution. Now, what do I think about the 22nd Amendment of the Constitution? The 22nd Amendment of the Constitution does not matter at all. Okay? Doesn't matter any more than the 21st or the 20th or the 19th or the 18th or the 17th, 16th, 15th, 14th, 13th, 12th, or 11th. And you can go the same route from 23 through 27. Okay? All of it is totally null and void. It was not properly ratified. And you can go back through each one of those amendments, and there are arguments on each and every one of them that they were not properly ratified. And regardless of the arguments, after number 14, all bets are off. In fact, after number 13, all bets are off. They went to war to make sure that the original 13th Amendment wouldn't stay part of the Constitution. And that was the amendment barring people with titles of nobility from serving in government, which means doctors and lawyers, people who were British nobility. And without that, we had British nobility in our government. And of course, founders like John Adams considered themselves Englishmen, at least originally. So we have this weird illusion that we fought the Revolutionary War to get the Constitution. And at that point, the British were defeated and gone. All right. Not true. That stuff's just not true. The revolution was way before the Constitution. The Constitution was already a compromise with the global regime, global finance. They wanted things certain ways. That was one of the cycles of revolutions worldwide. They got rid of governments and brought in new governments. We're in one of those cycles now. Another one happened in the 1860s and 1870s. Worldwide, we were told that was a civil war that protected our country after it had defeated the British. All of it is just bullshit, okay? It's an inversion. So 22nd Amendment, who gives a damn? Doesn't matter at all. Donald Trump is going to serve for however long the people of the United States of America want him to serve. And if the federal government has already been disbanded by Donald Trump, and there will never be a president again, at least not in this current form, then all good with that too. And if Donald Trump is a monarch who is just going to stay put and hand it off to his kids because those are the only people anyone in America would ever trust, then all good. I'm open to all the possibilities, okay? And it's not about thinking that Donald Trump is some hero or savior. It's just that right now we're at a point where, I don't know, 90% plus of this country would be totally incompetent to even understand what the government is meant to do. And I was one of those people before. So, I say it with limited judgment. I want it to be 90% the opposite direction, but it's not that way. And so until we have it that way, how are we supposed to actually expect that the people are going to govern themselves? Now, all that said, term limits seem like one of those things that people who want small government and a government that isn't prone to corruption, term limits is one of those things that people coming to these issues from that perspective have always demanded and wanted to protect. They think that's the sort of idea that will protect the country, maybe is a better way of saying it. We don't need term limits if we have real elections. And term limits, like voter ID, are not going to solve any problems if we don't have real elections. Voter ID is not going to solve elections on its own. And term limits without real elections wouldn't do shit. In a state of society where we would have real elections and we would have numerous wonderful candidates who'd be willing to serve faithfully and competently in public office, then term limits would be a way to get the good people serving in office removed. All right. The people, if they are properly in tune with these issues and are understanding what their representatives are doing in office, whether or not those representatives are representing their own interests, well, that's its own check on power. And if things were properly aligned in the way the founders intended, the people could simply recall their government and disband it at any moment if the government became corrupt, right? We could just simply recall people from their positions. We delegate them the power. At no point do they just get to say, well, the law says that I get to continue to hold power, even if I have lost all the people's faith in me. So, you know, and there's at least a discussion there. There's a discussion there, and I think probably an important one. But, you know, the people are the final authority. And if the argument's to be made, well, the people have decided you get at least this long before the people recall you, or, you know, the standards of impeachment are probably incorrect. The idea that some major crime or misdemeanor has to be committed for the people to issue a recall of whoever's there, or an impeachment, or whatever it's going to be called. The people should have that ability to deal with egregious behavior by public servants who are not serving the public. But I guess there's maybe an argument that they should be given a certain amount of time if they are elected to be able to carry out the will of the people. I don't know. So, do we need Donald Trump to serve a third term? Well, he's already serving a third term. So if people have a problem with that, they're going to have to get over it, I think. Yeah, term limits shouldn't be necessary. And I would not think it makes any sense to expend any time or energy trying to achieve term limits if we don't even have real elections. And again, as of now, we don't have real elections. Donald Trump's executive order the other day dealing with 51 former intelligence officials who misled the public on the basis of their imprimatur as parts of the intelligence community, the idea that they would have particular insight or inside information. That's what the executive order addressed. The election interference is obviously a part of that. The intelligence community broadly interferes in elections, but that doesn't clean up the problem. That doesn't fix the problem. All right. Even if they were going to use that executive order or 13848 or some of this other stuff that I've heard discussed to actually name and go after the problem, there's nothing in either of those executive orders that comprehensively fixes elections at a federal level. What would fix elections at a federal level is no longer having elections at a federal level, and that would be just fine. Elect people in your state, elect through legitimate elections in your state, good people who will faithfully execute the duty of their office, and then send them to Washington, D.C. as electors under the original Constitution, that original form, and they can choose the president on our behalf. They are the people most directly responsible to the American citizens, or the people of each state. That's how the system's supposed to work. We're not supposed to be electing a president through a popular vote in each state. Why? Because it's silly. And if the elections are corrupt, well, now the whole system is corrupt. And of course, the whole system is corrupt. And senators, by the way, weren't supposed to be elected through the popular vote either. The senators were supposed to represent the aristocracy. They had to make sure that all the rabble-rousing people wouldn't do anything so dumb and ignorant of how the world actually works that they're going to throw a wrench right in the gears and mess everything up. Now, you can have debates about whether or not that is something that, you know, we need. And maybe it is, by the way. Maybe we actually do need legitimate representation and some legitimate power from the people who operate the machinery. Maybe that's a place that we can have like serious debates in the future, what the role of power and wealth should be in a government that is also of, by, and for the people, in a just society where we all want to continue subscribing to the set of laws. So these are important discussions to have. But the point is, we weren't going to the same fake voting booth and choosing the senators either. So there were various checks on power that have been eliminated. And of course, now we vote for judges as parts of the system. Our whole system is a problem from the top down and from the bottom up. And none of it's going to be solved if we're going to have elections through any of what's out there so far. We can't solve these problems through elections. The state is not going to fix itself. Donald Trump at the federal level cannot fix elections in states. Maybe he can take us back to that original constitution so that elections then have to be fixed in states and people immediately begin carrying out some level of oversight in states. Maybe we get there through that direction, down that route, but I don't know. A couple of people left gift subscriptions. Thank you guys. Snowcat Operator with a couple in there. And I think I saw Julie Beans in there. Yes. Thank you guys. Much appreciated. Thank you all for the kind words. I think that we're usually good with my audience, but on these public streams, you never know if people are going to be insanely triggered by telling them, hey, you can't just go around screaming Constitution to everybody and hope it works. Saying Constitution to everybody actually isn't the full and complete answer on how these problems get solved. Before we get into some of the other stuff, I want to share also this ridiculous clip from, I believe, last night. Carly Bonet snagged this, and then I shortened it, but I think it's worth putting on people's radar after all of the upset surrounding Larry Ellison's appearance at the White House the other day, talking about how we were going to be AI dominant. They were going to bring in more than $500 billion for this Stargate project. And the whole point of it was going to be having AI find little tiny cancer fragments in our blood and then plotting an mRNA, quote unquote, vaccine that we could plug into ourselves, thus preventing the cancer that was already in our blood. That's not a vaccine. That would be a therapeutic. It's also a rather dystopian one. And I don't know if we want to continue giving these weird technocrats our blood. But people got very, very upset saying Trump betrayed us again about the vaccines. Okay. Those people, as we discussed the other day, are severely retarded. I mean, years behind. They're still stuck, I guess, in 2021. Ron DeSantis simps, many of these people, Maha people, many of these people. And that's unfortunate because we would like to like the Maha people. But the problem with the Maha people is the same as the problem with the DeSantis simps, is that they think what's on television is real. They participate in that timeline. And because of the demands placed upon them by their position within the party of false decorum, they are still the sorts of people that begin from the notion that they are smarter than Donald Trump and better informed than Donald Trump. They know vaccines are very, very bad, and fine, they are. And then Donald Trump must not know that because of him having to do his job with all the information he has, rather than them having to yell at him from the comfort of their couch. What are you going to do with people like that? They've been wrong about virtually everything for 5, 6, 7 years in a row, sometimes their whole lives, right? The neocons supporting Ron DeSantis, supporting Israel, supporting Ukraine, went along with masks, went along with lockdowns. Many of them went along with the vaccines. They just know that they can hammer Trump for the vaccines now that the vaccines aren't being kind of societally enforced by their fellow participants in the party of false decorum. Now they're allowed to speak out against vaccines. So that's a way that they can hit Trump. And that, again, is signaling within the party of false decorum, go after Trump. Now, a lot of that's been broken, but these people hang on to it. And the Maha people, of course, did the exact same thing. They were the smart ones protecting everybody's health. And that's why they knew that RFK Jr. would be the best choice to replace Joe Biden. And then when that didn't happen, then it was Donald Trump to replace Joe Biden, because Joe Biden had become too embarrassing for these people, despite the fact that they had already all supported Joe Biden and Joe Biden's legitimacy by calling Joe Biden the winner of that election and calling him president. And of course, they all did that. and all of them want some way out to let everybody know that, yeah, Donald Trump wasn't the right choice. We had to do it for these purposes. We put our principles aside once again because, just as we did in 2020, we knew the election was stolen, but we also knew that Donald Trump was just not the right guy to lead the country, despite the country voting for him. And, got to protect your reputation, got to protect the institutions. We can't have everything just going crazy. So we're just going to have to take this fake president for a while. So all those people that pretend to have saved lives by speaking out against the vaccines while Donald Trump was encouraging them, those were the people responsible for Joe Biden being called president by the mainstream in the first place. And without that, there would have been no vaccine mandates. So without that, there would have been no COVID. And all those people went along with the idea that there was a very deadly pandemic, but just that vaccines weren't the way to solve it. Find the Brownstone Institute folks. Find the Maha folks out there talking about how the pandemic was fake. Do they do that? No, they don't do that. Why not? Why do they still say, well, some vaccines are good. The polio vaccine is good. It's just these other vaccines that aren't good. Why do they do that? Those very smart Maha people. So there was a big meltdown about Larry Ellison in the White House. And I believe that, as I said the other day, directing that ire toward Trump is the mark of an insane person and probably an immoral person and a dishonest person for the reasons I just described. But have a look at this, and then we'll talk about what this means.
Deaths of people's pet cats because the cats have drunk raw milk meant for human consumption. The raw milk was from cows infected with bird flu. It gave the cats bird flu, and then the cats died. Because of all that very bad and now very fast-moving news about this new epidemic, the CDC just sent urgent guidance to American hospitals, advising hospitals that when people appear at the hospital with flu this flu season, people shouldn't just be tested for normal flu. They need to be tested for bird flu as well, because that needs to be handled differently. And anybody who tests positive for bird flu needs to be separated from other patients. Hospital staff need to know about it in order to wear appropriate protective clothing to protect themselves. I say the CDC just sent that urgent advice to American hospitals, but when I say they just sent it, what I mean specifically is they sent that advice last week while President Biden was still president. Because now that President Trump is president, he has ordered that the CDC and all U.S. health agencies should no longer release any information to anyone on anything. Not just to the public, but to scientists and doctors and hospitals. And that includes the CDC's flagship health alert publication for doctors and scientists called MMWR, Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. This week, CDC was scheduled to publish several MMWR reports, including 3 about this burgeoning bird flu outbreak that is happening and rapidly progressing right now. Those alerts, those MMWRs, are not going out. They were as of last week, and what was going out as of last week was alarming. As of this week, with Trump in charge, no. He has ordered that all information be stopped, including scientific information to advise hospitals on how to deal with this emerging epidemic. Is that popular? Is that a good idea? Is that perceived as a popular idea among the American people? Is that what you thought you were voting for? You may have noticed recently at the grocery store.
There you go. That is a brilliant piece of propaganda from Rachel Maddow. Now, it's not going to work at all. And by brilliant, I mean, for my purposes, I love that. So the idea is that raw milk is now carrying bird flu. So stay away from raw milk. And cats then got the raw milk. Cats are dying. So stay away from cats and cows, because cats and cows have bird flu. It just jumps. And then it would jump to a human if a human eats the raw milk. And you only voted for Donald Trump because he was going to lower the prices. And here we have eggs so high. Why? Because they had to slaughter like 1.5 million chickens because they had bird flu or something. So we have supply problems with eggs. Now the price of eggs is rising. So the one reason that you voted for Donald Trump to save on eggs is gone. And what you're left with is someone who doesn't care about the science at all. I mean, that guy was mad. That guy's really mad. Like, doesn't Donald Trump care about science at all? Like, longest neck. Doesn't Donald Trump care? Holy crap. Wow, I instantly become Rachel Maddow when I do this. Doesn't Donald Trump? Wow, isn't that amazing? Doesn't Donald Trump care about science? He does not care about science. How does Donald Trump go so anti-scientific so quickly? So Trump has cut off communications from the health-related executive branch agencies within the federal government. He said, you are not to be communicating to the public about any of your stuff. Okay? None of it. There's no comms going out from these agencies, nothing official going out to anyone. You were running a bird flu pandemic communications operation, and now that is going to immediately cease, and it will remain ceased until some people of ours get in there and they can control the communications. So there's not going to be any communications coming out of these federal agencies describing the new findings on bird flu. Rachel Maddow is talking about testing for bird flu rather than the flu. How do they do that? Does she know? They don't actually do that. They can't actually do that. They have computer models of what these viruses are, and then they will take a few samples from PCR tests and the rest of it and show viral particles, and they'll be like, oh, this is FG2.51A. No, it isn't. It's like they're just making up license plates for your snot. No, it's all bullshit. Okay. It's all bullshit. And what they are doing is pushing a pandemic narrative. Well, what do they use a pandemic narrative for? Well, they can shut down the economy, right? And they can push their pharmaceutical solutions. Do we need vaccines with no pandemics? No, we don't. They're going to sell a cancer vaccine. Is anyone going to believe that by the time that rolls around? Or will they just understand that vaccines cause cancer? Hi, banned on YouTube again. Yeah, it's clear that they're poisoning us in countless ways between the food, cigarettes, although I think that's probably way overblown. Probably as a cover for food and vaccines and the rest of the pharmaceuticals that they give us. Who knows what energy interference or whatever else. They're not about to cure cancer with vaccines. Nobody's going to buy that. All right. Someone saying it in Donald Trump's presence. Who cares? We can get over that. The next day, he cuts off the communications from the CDC and the FDA and all the rest of it. Okay. You can't have a very deadly pandemic without these organizations broadcasting this shit to the public with the imprimatur of trust the science. This is the science. We have found the science. We found it out there in the world floating around like so many bats in a cave. And we have compiled the science. Now we present it to you. Here, everybody, check out the science. Has the science scared you yet? Wait 3 weeks. Same schedule they had in 2020, right? Coming out January, or actually December, we started hearing about it. And then Trump started seeding it. They started doing some work here and there, shut down travel from China, all of this stuff before the big pandemic narrative got going. Middle of January, after everybody got back from the holidays, they kind of seeded it right in there before the holidays, just so that people might talk about it. Did you hear there's maybe some new pandemic coming? And then those people are, of course, the most well-informed. They're the hipsters about everything. January, February, a little talk here and there. Fauci, it was February 27th of 2020 when he told 60 Minutes that you don't need to wear a mask. Maybe it'll stop a droplet, but it can't really stop a virus. Fauci and Soros are just all combining in my mind. I mean, they're all really the same character, aren't they? All of that was going on well before the middle of March when we got shut down. The very deadly pandemic was in our midst for 3, 4, 5 months, longer, to the extent there ever was one. We knew about it in November or December. It was here at least in November or December. of 2019. That's according to their records. I mean, I'm not making it up. They might have made it up. There's nothing I can do about that, but I'm not making up that they said it. That means that it can't have been as deadly or as transmissible as they told us. So we already knew from that point on that everything else they were telling us about the pandemic was fake. Now, it took me maybe a couple months to put that together and realize it. It became very clear when you could see that they didn't care about the society falling apart. In fact, they were taking steps to make the society fall apart. You're not responding to a war or a threat if what you're doing makes society fall apart. Preserving society is the point. But they can't have a pandemic if they can't communicate the pandemic to the public. And Trump just made sure that none of these commies are going to be communicating pandemics to the public. Now, will one of them become a whistleblower and say the Trump administration is preventing us from telling the American public about how dangerous bird flu is? Will the news play up their own sources and stories? Yes, maybe they'll do that. All good. Tell them it's the CDC saying it. Tell them it's the FDA saying it. Give people a taste of what it's going to be like when these organizations are private and still trying to influence public sentiment and public behavior, because that's a preview of what we are going to see. There's no doubt in my mind about it. Being mad at Donald Trump for pushing this out into the spotlight. Sorry. Voice is still a little scratchy from minor cold this week. People are upset about Donald Trump for pushing this out into the spotlight. That's crazy. Okay. He's making it impossible for the thing that happened to ever happen again. And he's doing it by showing everybody. He's been doing it now for 5 straight years. And instead of understanding that and taking the proper lessons, all of these people are still telling their friends how Donald Trump is stupid because of what they heard on a podcast. It's mind-blowing. And obviously, I'm not even insulting podcasts, but let's be honest about what podcasts these sort of people listen to. If you're listening to the Daily Wire and Tim Pool and Dave Rubin, then this is what you're getting. They cater to people who are 3 and 4 and 5 years behind. And they continue to do that because they keep the people trapped back there by getting mad at what they get mad at and trying to figure it all out. Oh, gosh, yeah, I know. Larry Ellison, Donald Trump, shouldn't even have had him there. Sure, he's talking about bringing $1 trillion into our economy, and you're all getting scared that you might have to, speak up for yourself like you didn't do last time? You might actually have to stop groveling. The guy you pretended to vote for isn't solving all your problems by himself? Get the hell out of town. How could it happen? You said all you had to do was vote really hard. You voted really hard in 2020. And then, the election, of course, was obviously rigged and stolen and you didn't care. So it makes you think maybe you didn't vote that hard. And then you voted really hard again in 2024. And one of the races turned out the way you wanted it to go. So you figured you voted hard enough. And the congressmen and the senators, what there? These people haven't thought through any of this stuff. All they continue to do is get mad at Donald Trump. That shows like zero intellectual and emotional growth in 5 years. And we're going to worry about the opinions of these people. We're going to feed into what their reaction is. We're going to listen to them emote and throw tantrums. And then we're going to be like, oh, man, I don't think we're ever going to get there. These people are throwing tantrums again. Well, it's our fault for continuing to pay attention to the opinions and emotions of the child-brained. Okay? Tiny little beads rattling around in their skulls, like little communist maracas. And we're like, oh, I wonder what they think about things. I better get on Twitter and find out what Ben Shapiro's saying. Better find out what Tim Pool's saying on Twitter about Larry Ellison and a $500 billion investment in AI infrastructure. He's going to make me shoot that AI infrastructure into my arm. Fucking people, man. If you want to stay back there forever. This is exactly how to do it. Exactly how to do it. It's unbelievable. Our Piazza in the chat says opt out. Yes. Yeah. Maybe that's it. I'm just opt out. I don't find ops catering to these children to be entertaining, and I don't find their reactions to be entertaining. It's watching what the mainstream media does and watching what the so-called intellectual elites do and watching what Con Inc. and the Info Op do to these people. I don't know if there's anybody more responsible for bringing the word retarded back to the fore. This is like people in positions of significant power who are themselves retarded, exploiting the actually retarded in our culture. Like, just because people are retarded doesn't mean that I want them to be bullied and lied to and destroyed and have their retardation exploited all the time. I don't want that. I want them to stop being retarded. Okay. Which is why it's infuriating to watch people hold them back in their retardation and convince them that actually their retardation is as smart as anyone could ever get. Okay. That's what I want. So watching this info op continue to be played out on these people while they just continue to emote because they are continually treated as children, which keeps them behind, that seems like bullying to me. Okay. They are being exploited by very powerful forces. And I don't believe that we just protect them from this by allowing it to continue to go on while we say, well, you know, they're just back there. That's just the speed that they go. Okay. Well, tell them that that is not acceptable anymore. And make it not acceptable that people exploit their retardation. Sooner or later, you got to stand up for that stuff. You know, people are like, no, they're on our side. They're not on our side. Everybody, all the normal people out there who are needed to push forward with all of this, to create that American Renaissance, to bring that, people's understanding so that they can bring their actual talents and competencies to the fore. Because a lot of them do have talents and competencies. They just have an entire world inversion because of the info op that's played on them all the time. The reversing the inversion happens in a moment. All right. It doesn't happen by proving that Democrats are hypocrites. And we got to stop satisfying ourselves with this nonsense. Donald Trump went out on his first kind of presidential adventure journey today. He went down to Western North Carolina to visit the areas ravaged by flooding. Weather manipulation? Maybe. Dam manipulation to control water flows? Maybe. Drainage manipulation in the ground? Maybe. I would suggest all three of those are probably present. If the regime has access to the tools to be able to inflict this kind of damage, and they have goals that they are trying to achieve, or that they were already trying to achieve, that this damage will help them achieve, it should be assumed that that connection is the best possible explanation, not some natural series of events. The LA fires right now are not caused by climate change, for instance. Okay. So Trump's visiting North Carolina. He's visiting Los Angeles, and then he's eventually going to make a stop in Nevada, not for any particular disaster. Maybe he's checking on the progress with the tunnels. That's where Elon is pretending to build tunnels that were obviously already there for decades or millennia. Who knows? It's a conspiracy theory. It's a conspiracy theory. Elon has his boring company, and they're making all the tunnels right now. FEMA is not good. Trump announces agency overhaul during visit to North Carolina. All right, so I'm just sharing that headline from Fox News. I think I have some video here for us on this. I'm going to say goodbye to Rachel Maddow. Here we are.
On an executive order to begin the process of fundamentally reforming and overhauling FEMA or maybe getting rid of FEMA. I think, frankly, FEMA is not good. I think when you have a problem like this, I think you want to go and whether it's a Democrat or Republican governor, you want to use your state to fix it and not waste time calling FEMA. And then FEMA gets here and they don't know the area. They've never been to the area. And they want to give you rules that you've never heard about. They want to bring people that aren't as good as the people you already have. And FEMA's turned out to be a disaster. And you could go back a long way. You could go back to Louisiana. You could go back to some of the things that took place in Texas. It turns out to be the state that ends up doing the work. It just complicates it. I think we're going to recommend that FEMA go away. And we pay directly. We pay a percentage to the state. But the state should fix it.
That is as good as presidenting can be. Getting rid of FEMA. They don't do the right things. They don't have the on-the-ground competence. It is clear that what they are doing is responding to planned emergencies. It's hard to see it any other way at this point. And he's talking about Hurricane Katrina down there in Louisiana. I'm not sure. I don't remember the name of the hurricane in Texas, although maybe it was for something else. Maybe it was for the freeze from a few years ago. Again, something so overblown that should have never possibly caused the problems it caused. But getting rid of FEMA, that would be amazing. So many people have grave concerns, maybe entirely justified concerns about FEMA, and they would talk about FEMA camps and quarantine camps and whatever. It seemed to be one of those agencies that was part of the governmental overreach, totally unconstitutional and unjustified, just a massive sprawling bureaucracy that can do virtually whatever it wants for a time. And seems like we're getting all of that under control. Disband them, disband all of it. I mean, I want it gone. I've made myself very clear on that. And I know that people would have their practical concerns. Well, how is the government going to do this? Well, the states have to build up their capacity to do it. And Trump just said, you know, if the federal government needs to help the states, that's fine. But it's the state's responsibility to handle these things. Of course, that's the way it's supposed to be. It's the way it's got to be, unless we want the federal government managing absolutely everything. And if the federal government gets its hands in all these different parts of our society, then of course it's going to begin writing rules to govern all those parts of society. And it would begin, and as soon as it begins writing all those rules, then it's writing those rules on behalf of someone, first and foremost, the government itself. And then after that, all the people who continue to empower the government. And because that's transnational corporations, all of them working in correspondence with the global governing bodies, then what we have is just another path all the way down and a whole system of rules by which everyone else has to live, thrust down from on high from the global governing bodies. That's how the process has gone. And when we keep this massive sprawling federal bureaucracy, then that problem remains there forever. And of course, that's what these people want. I don't want that. I doubt that any of you want that. If you do, I think you're nuts. But these are the sorts of things that absolutely have to go away. And he is giving strong indications that he's going to make them go away. He's going to remove FEMA with a stroke of his pen. I'm into it. Let's take just a little sidebar here. So FEMA was created on April 1st, 1979, when Jimmy Carter signed Executive Order 12127, establishing the Federal Emergency Management Agency. The agency was formed under the 1978 Reorganization Plan number 3 and was designed to centralize disaster response efforts. So a lot of Jimmy Carter hits in the last few days. Interestingly, while FEMA itself was founded in 1979, the roots of federal disaster management can be traced back to the Congressional Act of 1803, which is considered the first piece of disaster legislation in the United States. Ha! I bet there was disaster legislation before that. Just, joking. Okay. So FEMA absorbed several federal agencies, including the Federal Insurance Administration, the National Fire Prevention and Control Administration. What? National Weather Service Community Preparedness Program. What? And the Federal Disaster Assistance Administration. So fires and weather are under FEMA. How about that? What would they do without fires and weather? Well, I guess we wouldn't need this agency, would we? There are always going to be fires and weather, though, right? I mean, it's natural. Are these very natural disasters? How come there are always dams involved? How come there's always drainage systems in cities involved? How come there's always so many things involved? I guess we'll never know. And we're not allowed to talk about it because that's a conspiracy theory. Okay, let me just make sure we're on the right track here. And I believe that we are. Great. Great. Huh. Oh, yes. One more thing I wanted to talk about. Thank goodness I looked at this. So this is also from this stop today. And I don't want to play the whole thing. I actually just found out about this video right before I started. So I haven't listened to it yet. But it is my understanding that Donald Trump actually had the people who were victimized by this weather event and mismanagement in North Carolina get up and speak on their own behalf about which insurance companies had been screwing them over. And President Trump offered them his podium and microphone in front of the press so that he could tell the nation. Okay, great. Perfect.
Pastor Nick's our church right down the road. We had only purchased in May, and it's a big church. We're a small congregation, and I had people say, "What are you going to do with this big building?" And I said, "Only God knows." And we had our dedication, and the storm came the next week, and the outpouring of people. My son brought the first load of supplies, and from there, I stayed there for about 3 months. I slept on the floor for about 3 weeks because the need was so great. The people were so devastated, and I said, I want to be here for them. And they were coming in just day and night, so there's really no need for me to go home. But we had people from Kentucky, Tennessee, Texas, Indiana, Oklahoma, people from all over. We have not received any help, like from the government or anything. But I said, Lord, if you want us to do that, people.
So they came from
all over the states.
But FEMA did nothing. It was the locals. Waste of time and money.
The locals and the people that knew us. And before the week was over, our church was so packed with supplies we couldn't even walk. Even in our sanctuary, it was up to the platform of things, and in our halls and in our rooms, and we're just now beginning to get a little straightened out. But somebody said, how long are you going to be here? I said, I'm going to be here through the winter and even on, if possible, because when you meet people that's been through the struggle, I had a little lady come up, and I said, can we do anything special for you? And she said, I don't want to be selfish, but said, could I have a cup of coffee? And I handed her that coffee, and she stood there, and tears just poured. She said, you don't realize how important the little things. It's not the big things in life that we have, but it's the little things and knowing that God is our source. I don't look to man. I don't have to have a lot of things. I had trees, about 20 trees down in my yard.
Okay, so I don't mean to be disrespectful by cutting her off, but you can hear that video. Find it on YouTube, of course. I imagine Donald Trump in North Carolina today shouldn't be any problem. It's also in the info stream on Telegram, t.me/veryreasonable. And as I said, Carly Bonet clipped that and put that up, so you can find it on her channel on Telegram as well. So that's Donald Trump standing right there, fully attentive, listening to the American people talk about the problems that they have had through no fault of their own, of course, that the government that many people depend on to help them out in times of trouble like that, that the government totally abandoned them on. So again, this is just a polar opposite idea of a president from what we just witnessed before. Donald Trump is out there taking questions from the press multiple times a day about significant actions that he is taking intentionally. Okay. And by intentionally, I mean not as opposed to accidentally, but he has a genuine intent about the goal these actions are meant to accomplish because he has heard about the issue, adopted a position on the issue, and he is now willing to stand behind his position on that issue for whatever reasons it is he has. That is not the same thing as a president who just serves as a rubber stamp for whatever the administrative state puts in front of him, for whatever the global regime and the uniparty put in front of him. They have their little deals. They want this or that executive order. Joe Biden, right? But you can go to Barack Obama, go to George W. Bush, the rest of them. They're implementing the program on behalf of the uniparty, on behalf of the regime. They're not implementing any program on behalf of the American people. Donald Trump has realized that there are a whole lot of problems across the board in America, and he is systematically going through and trying to do what he can with the legitimate power of his office and not going beyond that to ease at least the effect those problems are having on Americans, like actual American people, not on behalf of the uniparty, not on behalf of the global regime, not on behalf of Zionism or on behalf of Big Pharma, for all of the people out there who are those kind of undercover Trump haters, trying to be more based than Donald Trump and more based than MAGA. It's retardation. It's the vaccine stuff and it's the Israel stuff. And that's that. Both of them are issues that I would largely agree with those people about. But then there is a departure point, which is what those issues actually mean and who out there is a potential solution to any of that. Because when you get that stuff wrong, when you pretend that Joe Biden was a real president, as the vaccine angry people and the Israel angry people do, well, then we've got bigger problems. So I would agree with them about the problems posed by Big Pharma, posed by vaccines, posed by the global Zionist agenda, and posed by the American relationship with the global regime's proxy state called Israel. Okay. I agree with them that there are problems there. They're just not problems caused by Donald Trump and the people who are going after Donald Trump for these problems seem specifically geared toward making sure that the problems cannot be solved, because Donald Trump is clearly the solution to those problems if you are paying an ample amount of attention to what's actually happening in the world rather than just emoting about vaccines and about Jews. Okay, let's continue to some of Donald Trump's executive orders yesterday. Oh man, I have so much stuff to get through. At least we're only an hour into it, right? We still got some time. We still have some time. Okay. So let's knock yesterday out of the way. And then if we need to continue on different days to the rest of the executive order agenda, we will do that, because I do want to get through the immigration stuff. I think it's really important. We're going to get to some of that today. I think we can make it there. I think we can make some good headway today. I'm still very positive. Okay, so this is Trump's executive order yesterday, presidential action, declassification of records concerning the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, Senator Robert F. Kennedy, and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. More than 50 years after the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, Senator Robert F. Kennedy, and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the federal government has not released to the public all of its records related to those events. Their families and the American people deserve transparency and truth. It is in the national interest to finally release all records related to these assassinations without delay. Great. All of the government's information is already the people's information. There should not be any restrictions whatsoever for the American people getting this information. There should have never been any restrictions. But there were, and I wonder, wasn't Malcolm X also assassinated? Let's just get through all the assassinations, right? Because assassinations are a regime tool. All of this stuff eventually goes back to the regime. When we get these releases, it's just going to be a matter of which parts of the regime did they choose to blame these things on so that the bigger project would be protected throughout. And I said to Brian on Badlands Daily this morning, I think that this is going to be a bit of a rug pull. It's going to be a limited hangout. Now, it doesn't have to be Donald Trump's fault. It's just also the case that there might not be anything there the way people think that there's going to be. And, you know, people have been led to believe that over the course of the last 6+ decades because there are redactions in what has been released. There's a bunch of information that has not been released at all. And so the assumption is that within that information, that is where all the missing links will be found. And we can finally put all of this together in some way. I don't know if that's going to be true. You know, we have the commission, the Warren Commission after JFK. We have the 9/11 Commission after 9/11. Do these commissions get all of the information from all of the sources so that they can tell us exactly what happened and who's to blame? Or do they get all the information from all the sources so that none of that information can be accessed by other people? It can't be involved in any sort of litigation. They get to say we have an ongoing investigation. We're going to wait for the results of our investigation for some indeterminate amount of time. And then when that happens, we get a limited hangout. We get what is going to eventually compile the entire body of the official story. They've now gotten their story straight. They've gotten all the evidence straight. They've eliminated whatever might actually cause problems for those with legitimate exposure. And the thing just goes on. Are we going to hear that it was the Dulles brothers? Are they going to take the Dulles name off the airport and replace it with the Trump name? Gosh, what a victory that will be. And the television will portray that as a victory. And they'll say, look at what the CIA did. Okay, well, the CIA is one little piece of a global intelligence and spy network. And it has been since before the CIA was even created. Okay, and on whose behalf are they operating? On whose behalf does international intelligence, does that international spy network operate? Is MI6 part of that network? Is Mossad part of that network? Are other intelligence organizations part of that network? And the answer, of course, is yes. They have intelligence organizations in countries all over the world. And so are we going to get the full record of exactly what happened? And then here's the other problem. Even if we do, okay? And again, this isn't to blackpill. It's because we need to be focused. Our eye needs to be on the ball that is being pitched at us, not the one that like some kids are throwing around over there, you know? And we're constantly paying attention to that ball, thinking that's the real ball. No, the ball is in the pitcher's hand and he's about to throw it to us. We're the batter in this analogy. Okay. The point is not solving a conspiracy theory, solving the news, solving one of these mysterious events. Okay. Even if there is a solution in reality that can be accessed by us, and I'm not convinced that there is at this point, figuring out that solution on the basis of a new body of evidence is still getting the epistemology wrong. And it's still going to lead to improper conclusions. Okay. We're going to get this next body of evidence. And at that point, someone is going to say, well, I mean, that's all of it. That's all the evidence. And all the evidence we have, all the evidence we'll ever have access to, suggests it's this one thing. And so, this is what the evidence says. You waited for the evidence. Now you got the evidence because you wanted to make your decision on the basis of evidence. You got the evidence and you don't have the answer you want. And so now we've solved this conspiracy theory with all the evidence. And, there's still questions out there. How did it happen? It's an information operation. Okay. It's still an information operation. But even if we actually got all the way to the bottom and the conspiracy theory, quote unquote, the conspiracy itself is maybe a better way of saying it, is totally resolved, that still doesn't get the higher level understandings that are necessary. It really doesn't. There are forces operating way above whoever is ultimately responsible for killing JFK. Oh, we're going to find it. We're going to find out it was the CIA. Oh, wow. Well, what's the CIA's status now since it's been 60 years? Not saying good things about the CIA, but Donald Trump went in there for his first speech of his first term and talked about how there was essentially a good twin and evil twin in the CIA, and he thought that there could be a good future for the organization. Have they been turned around yet? I don't know. But I do know that people who are going to want to hide levels higher than the CIA will be happy to blame these things on the CIA, as Tucker Carlson does all the time. And maybe Tucker's doing that for a good reason, and maybe he's not. This doesn't have to be a conversation about Tucker Carlson. He's just pitching to the normiedom out there, the normie sphere, that it was the CIA. So when we get this and we find out, oh yeah, it's the CIA, what does that do? Does anybody look any further? Oh, hey, we proved it was the CIA based on, look at this, all this evidence. Oh, yes, such evidence. Official records. What difference does it make at this point? Okay. They can't get us all the way to the end of the story because the story is much bigger than all of this. Further on, Trump mentions that JFK, there was already legislation on this in 92. It was supposed to be out in 2017. Donald Trump has declassified much of it. It's been held back by potentially the FBI, parts of the deep state, Joe Biden, etc. I have now determined that the continued redaction and withholding of information from records pertaining to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy is not consistent with the public interest, and the release of these records is long overdue. And although no act of Congress directs the release of information pertaining to the assassinations of Senator Robert F. Kennedy and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I have determined that the release of all records in the federal government's possession pertaining to each of those assassinations is also in the public interest. Okay, so within 15 days on the JFK thing and within 45 days on the RFK and MLK things, Donald Trump is supposed to have a plan presented to him about how this information will be rolled out and released to the public. And again, not to blackpill, but I expect that this is going to be some version of limited hangout that'll be released in the same way the Twitter files or the Facebook files or the rest of it was released. And by the way, if they were like, hey, Badlands Media, you guys are going to do the JFK thing, I'd be like, okay. And then I would immediately post, hey guys, I think that this is a limited hangout. And by the way, I'm not saying I don't want the opportunity to go through it, but yeah, I don't know that any amount of look through any of this is going to get us all the way to the end. I would love to be proven wrong. Okay. I really would love to be, but I have a feeling that these commissions, and we should understand these commissions for what they are designed to create an official story about an event and provide a massive body of evidence for that official story. And the January 6th committee did exactly that. Okay. It was improperly formed against the rules of the House. All right. No legitimacy whatsoever. The subpoenas and all that nonsense, pure nonsense. At best, they're going to find out the truth of what the media did and get all that on record. And that's probably a good thing. But the January 6th committee pushed the idea that everything the television reported for the year or two prior was true. And it wasn't true. And they had ridiculous witnesses like Cassidy Hutchinson and the rest. Are we supposed to pretend that the 9/11 Commission was different than that, or that the JFK, the Warren Commission, was different than that? I would never pretend that. I think that that sounds preposterous. I think that we are well aware of how this government operates and how it goes about protecting itself. So, yeah, man, I don't know. People are going to, I guess, find that upsetting because they want the truth. People are demanding the truth, and they are angry that they know the truth is being held back from them and has been held back from them for a long time. And I understand the anger, and I understand the horror, of course. I talked for a while in probably 2022, 2023, mostly, about how this awakening process kind of takes you through all of the movie genres. And one of them up there at the front is horror. You can't believe how much you've been lied to. You can't believe the scale of the lies. You can't believe that the truth is out there and you should be able to access it, but it's being barred from you on purpose. And you believe that we have some kind of right to this truth and should be able to blast through the government and attain the truth. Well, we should be able to blast through whatever barriers the government puts up, preventing us access from truth that they possess, if the government is of, by, and for the people. But it's not, okay? And if it was, then their information would be our information, because they would want an informed populace helping them make the right decision. But they don't want that, and they don't want an informed populace. And no matter what Donald Trump does or says, and no matter how good the people around him are, whether it be RFK Jr. or Kash Patel or DNI Ratcliffe or whoever it is you might like in Trump's inner circle and on the fantasy team, no matter how good all those people might be and how well-intentioned they might be, the key evidence was probably destroyed decades ago, all right, and barred from public sight forever through its destruction. There might not be an answer to get from what the government has, because their goal is to protect themselves and the interests above them. And they don't care about whoever they make walk the plank below them. I've talked about how Joe Biden's entire 4 years of quote unquote presidency was a fall guy operation for the regime. Blame everything on Biden. And that continues to be the case. So the idea that they've had 60 years to cover up the truth of this, of the JFK assassination, and that they just didn't do a very good job of it after 60 years, and that it's just hiding there minus the redactions, and we could get it, and then we would know everything. Man, that sounds extraordinarily unlikely. I think that more likely we'll get an answer that members of the deep state were deeply involved. I don't know how involved. Hopefully it's all an exposure operation on George H.W. Bush, which leads to 9/11, which leads to every aspect of the global regime, Israeli involvement, and the rest of it. All right. I want all the third rails touched. Okay. I'm not saying this to black pill. I'm saying this because if there is any way to get to the bottom of all of this, it's going to require everybody's attention the whole time. It's not going to require groveling over whatever crumbs were thrown next. All right. Oh my God, we have the whole truth now. Oh, look at the evidence. It turns out that those conspiracy theories you were saying, well, at least one of them is not true according to this evidence. So you're just going to have to give it up now because this is everything. You think that the release of all this information is going to wake people up. They prepare this information so that people will never wake up and never know the truth. All right. And so I think it behooves us to be at least somewhat prepared for that. Now, on the opposite side of things, we have a man who I trust a great deal, or maybe trust is the wrong word, but I have a lot of respect and admiration for, and I believe that he is a rock solid, diehard patriot in the inner circles, and that would be my surrogate dad, Steve Bannon. Here is what he had to say yesterday on War Room, and I found this very interesting. I think you will too.
But today, President Trump sending a clear signal. In 15 days, I want a plan from DNI. And that plan, and trust me, folks, we'll be all over this. And this is not going to be a 2-year plan. This is going to be, so his skirt's clean. right? That they can then go and do it immediately. We'll be on top of that. But it's not calling for the exact release today. It's calling for DNI to come back in 15 days. And we're going to make sure that plan doesn't say, well, we're going to bleed them out over the next 4 years. Now, President Trump wants these things out. What's his great quote? Everything will be revealed. How's that? It's like it's a fascinating film, fascinating movie.
It's like a fascinating film. It's like a fascinating movie. Okay. So he's talking about a DNI plan. That is what these executive orders call for. Who's going to be the DNI? Well, TV character Tulsi Gabbard has been chosen as part of the fantasy team to play the part of Director of National Intelligence. And if what we're going to have is a limited hangout operation on the JFK files that implicates the CIA but goes no further and goes no higher, well, who better to tell that story to the public than the regular guest of the Tucker Carlson show, Tulsi Gabbard, Fox News host Tulsi Gabbard? Is Pete Hegseth going to communicate to us the 9/11 exposure or a limited hangout? Hey, man, I would love to give all these people the benefit of the doubt. I just don't have any reason to. And because I don't have any reason to, I'm not going to. Okay. They don't get the benefit of the doubt just because Trump made them part of the fantasy team. Trump's the only person who gets the benefit of the doubt. And then Bannon for me a little bit, Bannon and Elon to some extent. I'll just side with them mostly and try to focus on the idea that I think whatever they're doing, whatever they're saying, even if I think something's a little bit off, that they're headed in the right direction. Okay. But nobody else gets that. Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard might be great. Okay. And I hope one day she proves that to everybody. Proves it to me. I hope so. She doesn't have to prove anything to me, of course. That's not any kind of priority, but I hope that it's proven to me that she's awesome and did wonderful things. Until then, there's no benefit of the doubt. And if you're the one who's going to be preparing this plan for whatever this release is going to be, and you spent the last few years going on Tucker Carlson and saying very based and red-pilled things, but, not really talking about what matters, except in the normie sphere, well, we're going to keep going on just like this. There's not going to be any benefit of the doubt. None is required. Why would any be given? It's like giving up leverage for no reason. I'm just going to believe this person because Trump named them. And it's funny too, because a lot of people who get really upset when I will say that I don't give the benefit of the doubt to Tulsi or to Pete Hegseth or to JD Vance or the rest of them, they are people often who think that Mike Pence is a traitor and that Mike Pompeo, as Tucker Carlson often says, director of the CIA, wanted to kill Julian Assange, blah, blah, blah. If you think that those picks by Trump turned out to be bad guys, then you have already accepted the notion that picks by Trump can turn out to be bad guys. So to then see that someone is a pick by Trump and then trust them no matter what it is they do or what it is they've done prior, well, that's crazy. That's understanding that you made a very specific mistake for a very specific reason, and for no reason whatsoever, you are prepared to make that mistake again just because you want to, I guess, psychologically feel like everything is going totally according to plan. And it might be going totally according to plan. The plan might just be to expose these people. And then people are like, well, now you're just going too far because now you're assuming that they're bad people. I'm not assuming anything. I'm just assuming that the other possibility I presented is a possibility. And it is a possibility because we've seen it become a reality in the past. And that's not me asserting that. That's many people's own position. So there's not even an argument there. There's just someone emoting because they don't want to think that JD Vance or Pete Hegseth or Tulsi Gabbard are bad guys. And why don't they want to think that? Well, it's not got anything to do with JD Vance or Tulsi Gabbard or Pete Hegseth or even Donald Trump. It's that they don't want to think, oh, I got fooled by the television again. But the television exists to fool you. And if you agree with the television, there's at least some good chance that you're being fooled. Donald Trump agreeing with the television is spotlighting something that the television is saying. You agreeing with the television is you just believing the television. It's not the same thing. And we really do have to be conscious of that as we go forward, because, I mean, if people are going to take the responsibility upon themselves to try to understand what is going on in our society and how our government operates and how we might be able to, as a people, not as individuals, but as a people, influence these decisions at some point, well, then we can't just go around giving everybody the benefit of the doubt if they're lying to our face because Donald Trump said a nice thing about them once. And for some reason, we're still doing that after 5 years. Yeah. Insane. And then to top it off, the very same people are quite often the people who get upset about like the Larry Ellison stuff. So Trump knows what he's doing sometimes, doesn't know what he's doing other times. And as long as you agree with Fox News that J.D. Vance, Pete Hegseth, and Tulsi Gabbard are some of the greatest public servants that have ever existed in American history, then those are the times that Trump knows what he's doing. Well, then you're just listening to Fox News. It really is. It really is incredible to me. And there's a lot of Fox News out there still. Just straight up mainstream media. And people think it's okay because they say nice things about us sometimes. It's wild, man. It's wild. You can see it when it's MSNBC, right? You can see it when it's CNN because they say things that we don't like. But as soon as they say things that we do like, it just disappears right before our eyes. Fox News isn't like the other mainstream media. Fox News talks about the mainstream media. The liberal mainstream media. Sean Hannity, Mark Levin. The mainstream media. I can't even scream like Levin today. My voice isn't going to do it. But they are the mainstream media. They are the mainstream media. Like they're operating on behalf of the military-industrial complex and the intelligence community. Maybe they're doing it as good guys. Maybe it's all an information operation, and I'm just not smart enough to understand why they lie to millions of people at a time. But they do. Okay, so everything will be revealed. Steve Bannon says, I'll take his word for it. I don't think it's going to be revealed through these methods. Hopefully someday in the future, we will get it. But within 15 days on the JFK thing, within 45 days for RFK and MLK, the DNI will present Donald Trump with plans about how the release should go. And as I said, I believe that this is probably going to be like the Twitter files. And I believe that we'll probably see journalists, quote unquote, along those lines, selected to release them. I don't think it's going to be Badlands. If it is, wonderful. We'll totally go through it, right? Stop the presses. This is the only thing we'll do. No more shows, no more nothing. Let's just focus on these files. I'm game for that, but I don't think that that's what's going to happen. And so I think that these things are good, but the people's work is not over. Got to press for this stuff or it's not going to get there. The forces of government are not going to have totally realigned under Donald Trump faithfully in a MAGA agenda, wanting to actually help the people. There's a whole lot of people that can be paid off by a whole lot of powerful forces and powers and individuals or incentivized in various other ways to keep the really big stuff quiet. And we should recognize that going in rather than get rug pulled over and over and over again. And, if people are like, well, that's negative. Well, I'm sorry. You're just going to have to, figure out what's actually going on and put your emotions aside. You cannot simultaneously be awakening to the truth of the world and constantly be set and controlled by your emotions. Let us continue with the Donald Trump executive orders of yesterday. I'm not going to be able to go through all of them because he just knocked out 6, 7, 8 of them. Presidential action on strengthening American leadership in digital financial technology. The digital asset industry plays a crucial role in innovation and economic development in the United States, as well as our nation's international leadership. It is therefore the policy of my administration to support the responsible growth and use of digital assets, blockchain technology, and related technologies across all sectors of the economy, including by protecting and promoting the ability of individual citizens and private sector entities alike to access and use for lawful purposes open public blockchain networks without persecution, including the availability to develop and deploy software, to participate in mining and validating, to transact with other persons without unlawful censorship, and to maintain self-custody of digital assets, which means they do not have to be held in an exchange. You can take them off the exchange and hold them on your person or in your brain. And that is very important. That's very important. To the extent we are going to have a government and a federal government that's going to be able to regulate things like this at all, and perhaps they shouldn't be able to regulate things like this at all, but to the extent that they will be able to do that, all of these are absolutely necessary protections. I could go on. Let's get through some more of this and then I'll come back to it. Promoting and protecting the sovereignty of the US dollar, including through actions to promote the development and growth of lawful and legitimate dollar-backed stable coins worldwide. Okay, so a dollar stable coin that people will be able to use as a digital dollar worldwide. Now, will all of this be pinned to Bitcoin? That is the question. Protecting and promoting fair and open access to banking services for all law-abiding individual citizens and private sector entities alike. And we'll come back to this in Donald Trump's World Economic Forum speech. Providing regulatory clarity and certainty built on technology-neutral regulations, frameworks that account for emerging technologies, transparent decision-making, and well-defined jurisdictional regulatory boundaries, all of which are essential to support a vibrant and inclusive digital economy and innovation in digital assets, permissionless blockchains, and distributed ledger technologies. And taking measures to protect Americans from the risks of central bank digital currencies, which threaten the stability of the financial system, individual privacy, and the sovereignty of the United States, including by prohibiting the establishment, issuance, circulation, and use of a CBDC within the jurisdiction of the United States. So a lot of important things here. And let's go down here. Establishing a working group on digital asset markets. And here are the members of that group. And where are we? The prohibition of central bank digital currencies. And is this there we are. The working group shall evaluate the potential creation and maintenance of a national digital asset stockpile and propose criteria for establishing such a stockpile, potentially derived from cryptocurrencies lawfully seized by the federal government through its law enforcement efforts. That is very interesting. So however many Bitcoin the government has seized over these last, 15 years almost? It's not coming to me immediately. 2009. Are we getting towards 16 years? Whatever they have seized will become part of that national stockpile. Now, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. People are going to have different opinions about that. The national stockpile thing. Now, this says crypto digital asset stockpile. Is it going to be just Bitcoin? It could be. Now, some people get upset to think it might be just Bitcoin. I don't know why. Also, the Bitcoin maximalists who think it's super exciting to have the national stockpile because it's recommended in Jason Lowery's Soft War are also doing that with the admission that there's going to be a central government, a federal government that will have the power to protect this as a nation state, which means that it's not just going to be a bunch of sovereign people running around figuring out what's going on, which also means that you can say Bitcoin solves everything until you're blue in the face, but you also have to know about how societies operate because we're still going to have one. And it's weird that both of those expressions seem to go out through kind of the same messaging and messengers in that community. Sovereignty is absolutely important. It's important for the individual, and this protects the right to self-custody. And there's nothing that the government can do about that right except actually enact state violence against the citizens. So that would obviously be something that only an illegitimate government could interfere with in the first place. So as lip service, it's at least good. Fine, great. Sovereignty must be protected at the nation state level, at the state level in this arrangement, and at the individual level, of course, as well. But it's not going to be only that. There's still going to be a society if governments in the world are going to have Bitcoin stockpiles, a weapons related term, again, as described in Soft War by Jason Lowery, suggesting a Second Amendment right to its possession as well. There's still going to be a government. There's still going to be societies. There's still going to be a military. So there's still going to be enforcement mechanisms that are going to override people's sovereignty in some pure sense. So just declaring sovereignty over and again is not going to get us all the way there. It's a necessary component, but it's not going to get us all the way there. And I think that we have to, as you know, I'm a basically maximalist supporter of Bitcoin and a supporter of the software theory of Bitcoin. And still, there's more to society than that. And a ledger, an irrefutable and immutable ledger, is a truth mechanism that can provide great things in society. And removing ourselves from the influence of central banks and fiat currency are wonderful advances for humanity, hopefully. But the hopefully comes in with the fact that there's still got to be a rest of it. There's still got to be a society out there. And so we're going to have to know some things about how societies operate and how governments operate. And so I don't see how the conversation can just be ignored on behalf of stacking Bitcoin. And again, stack as much as you can, right? It's pretty clear that world governments are very interested in Bitcoin. We've talked about BRICS before. Donald Trump was saying that that countries that leave the dollar and go to BRICS currencies are going to be heavily tariffed to the tune of 100%. And that's fine. That's his right to do that, right? Every country looks out for itself, but every country has the opportunity to do what it wishes. And he mentioned that in the World Economic Forum speech too. We'll get to that in just a second. He said countries can avoid tariffs by making their products in the United States of America. If they don't want to do that, then they're going to get tariffed so that our citizens and our companies and our products will be the first choice for Americans. It is eminently sensible, and every other country should be doing the same thing as well. And so, of course, that comes to their currency as well. They have a choice to use their currency or have a currency coalition or whatever. They're just not going to be able to do business with the United States for free if they do that. Whereas if they use the dollar, if they build their products in America, then it's an entirely different arrangement. That makes sense. That is reasonable. It is not a globally planned economy. And again, that's what he basically was telling the World Economic Forum right to their faces yesterday. And it was a beautiful thing to witness. And it's funny because it's, you know, we talk about these things that occasionally people are like, why aren't you saying everything's perfect all the time? Well, because I don't see that as being my job. It's not how I look at the world. It's not what I see in the world. I see plenty of pitfalls that many people in our movement are speeding headfirst toward, and I would like to stop that. But if you don't think that I'm optimistic and you don't think that I'm extremely pro-Trump in all of this, then you are really getting something wrong in just an opposite fashion. I don't know how people reach these conclusions, but they sure do, or they at least present as though they do when they're emoting in my direction. Fact sheet from yesterday. President Donald J. Trump takes action to enhance America's AI leadership. Removing barriers to American AI innovation. Today, President Donald J. Trump signed an executive order eliminating harmful Biden administration AI policies and enhancing America's global AI dominance. President Trump is fulfilling his promise to revoke Joe Biden's dangerous executive order that hinders AI innovation and imposes onerous and unnecessary government control over the development of AI. Censorship is a major AI issue. Garbage in, garbage out. That's a problem of a system that analyzes information within the system and then attempts to provide answers based on the cumulative knowledge that that information provides. If there's a wealth of information that includes basically all true information outside of that closed system, then the answers provided from within that closed system are going to be retarded. This is the intellectual kids table problem that we have over on Twitter. The same problem exists with AI. It's a garbage in, garbage out problem. The Biden AI executive order established unnecessarily burdensome requirements for companies developing and deploying AI that would stifle private sector innovation and threaten American technological leadership. And that makes a lot of sense too. It's just like the censorship. They want the controls coming down from the top. They want to make sure they know what's going in and what's coming out, because the tool itself would be too powerful for the people out there if they were able to use it to quickly access information that would damage the regime over and over and over again. And we are, again, speeding headfirst toward that moment. I believe that moment is coming. It's not far off. It may have already hit. I don't think it did, but it may have. These are really important steps. Again, government shouldn't have any control over this stuff. According to the Constitution, no restrictions on speech or expression. They would argue that the AI is not a person speaking, and maybe it's not, but the information that goes in is information that everyone should have access to. The information that comes out, same thing. And we would, if it, the AI is essentially a middleman. It is a stand-in for the people collectively in this sense. So by the same token, it shouldn't be censored. Today's executive order revokes the Biden executive order, which hampered the private sector's ability to innovate in AI by imposing government control over development and deployment. It also calls for departments and agencies to revise or rescind all policies, directives, regulations, orders, and other actions taken under the Biden AI order that are inconsistent with enhancing America's AI, leadership in AI. And so everything that, not only the executive order itself, but everything that stemmed and grew out from that executive order must be unwound. This is a process that needs to be undertaken in just realm after realm of our society. It's got to happen. This is the way to make it happen. Get rid of the whatever mechanism gives it legal authority, and then everything that happened on the basis of that false legal authority gets removed. Same concept as fraud vitiates everything. The reason these same concepts keep popping up over and over and again all over the place in principle and in form is because we are subject to all of these same problems being intentionally inflicted in the same ways over time. All right. Everything has been inverted through this long process. We've reached this endpoint. The good thing is that to reverse that, to unwind that inversion, is not nearly the same sort of process. Now, pulling that thread might make it a really long thread that destroys the entire sweater. I'm mixing metaphors here. But that part has to happen. It just has to happen. And maybe there are guardrails. Maybe there are ways that we can avoid the worst consequences as these things are unwound. But they've got to be unwound. And once they're unwound all the way, building them back up to the way they are right now is not something that can just happen in some short time. A lot of people are saying, as some critique of all this, what we need legislation, because these are all executive actions by Donald Trump that can be reversed by his successor. Well, that assumes that we have the same system that we have now. I don't assume that. We assume that a successor is coming soon, and that successor will not be MAGA, which is interesting because the people saying that all believe that J.D. Vance is going to be the successor. I don't believe that either. And it also kind of mistakes what these are doing, because these are removing things that should have never existed in the first place. And so once they are removed and the system is unwound and the system itself behind it is removed, then trying to get that put back in place is going to see its own legal response. And then that will go up to courts that will rule, obviously, that none of this is allowed under the original Constitution. So by unwinding these things and getting back to our government as it was meant to be, according to the founders, the problem is actually solved at that point, and it's not something that can just be reversed because these are executive orders. So I think that people are missing a key aspect of that. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't think I am. I mean, I wouldn't say it if I thought I was. But the idea that some of this stuff can just be turned back the other direction in 4 years, no way. Especially not stuff with AI or with digital marketplaces, unless the people are just going to grovel before whatever government we have in the future. And if that's the case, I mean, if the people are going to grovel forever, then none of these problems are solvable. Okay. There's an argument to be made that it is people's groveling and my own, I don't separate myself, that got us in this position to begin with. Okay. So if we recognize that and we continue to grovel, we are saying that we do want to be in this forever. We would just like the opportunity to complain about it and occasionally be told by the television that our guy won. And, you know, for a lot of people who call themselves Republicans and conservatives, that's legitimately all they want and all they ever want, because what they really want is to not fight with their liberal friends and to not have their liberal friends call them terrible and racist and violent and all these other names that prevent them from having good standing in their communities or being able to, or preventing them from getting jobs or having positions of leadership. Okay. Most people are just scared of liberals. Sad. I get it. They do terrible things. But the only other option is living in a society like this where they dominated everything. Otherwise, you just have to let them do their terrible things to you. And then you live through it and you're like, oh, that's what I was scared of, these people. Then you move on. This executive order establishes the commitment of the United States to sustain and enhance America's dominance in AI to promote human flourishing, economic competitiveness, and national security. All of these are important. And again, recall, as I said the other day, if you're not a paid subscriber, you didn't see me say it the other day, though that will be out on Sunday. I put those episodes, the subscriber streams, out the following Sunday. So that'll be available to everyone at that point. But you would have heard me talk about how AI and nuclear and all of this, I believe, is coded language for other technologies. And AI specifically is coded language for Bitcoin. They talk about these AI data centers being placed right next to power plants. That is the arrangement for Bitcoin. And Bitcoin miners, they have their mining equipment set up right next to the power plant. So the power is produced and directly just moves between. And then any surplus can be sold out into the need for power generation to power people's homes and whatever else. Okay, so AI and crypto czar. Right now, that is David Sachs. David Sachs is part of, or was part of, the PayPal mafia, okay, with Elon Musk and Reid Hoffman and Peter Thiel and these types, okay? So he's been around the entire time and has probably known about the long-term project the entire time. And is the PayPal mafia winning, or is Donald Trump drafting off the PayPal mafia only to later surpass them? And we're going to find out. Maybe they're just actually partners and have been partners the whole time. And these people's public personas and public statements and prior political agendas and whatever else are not relevant. Maybe it's not relevant that they're all scientific materialists and not Christians. Although also maybe it is relevant. Maybe it's the only relevant thing. We're going to have to find out in the future, which means we need to watch very closely. In historic actions, the Trump administration committed to doubling AI research investment, established the first ever national AI research institutes, strengthened American leadership in AI technical standards, and issued the world's first AI regulatory guidance to govern AI development in the private sector. Trump also took executive action in 2020 to establish the first ever guidance for federal agency adoption of AI to more effectively deliver services to the American people and foster public trust in this critical technology. Now, I never like when anyone is trying to foster trust. It's not because I don't like there to be things that are trustworthy. It's because things are either trustworthy or they're not. And fostering public trust is a terrible idea. Also, when it comes to technology, Donald Trump has successfully done the opposite of fostering trust over and over again. And I hope that he continues to pursue that mode rather than the other. I don't believe that the discussion of AI vaccines for cancer the other day fostered any trust, and I'm very happy with that outcome. But Trump is not the problem. Trump is not the one to get mad at. Trump is a messenger. Trump is a tribune of the people and a servant of the people, and always mid-negotiation. And understanding him that way is far better than expressing your emotions about how much smarter you are than Donald Trump once again. And I know that that is probably not geared entirely toward my listeners, but it is the sort of thing that perhaps you deal with in your everyday life, your interactions on social media. And, in some sense, that's what I've always tried to provide on this show, is an answer to those people so that you can use those answers on those people and hopefully wreck them rather than, the Ben Shapiro and Tim Pool approach where let me collect all the facts from the central narrative and I'm going to tell you how the facts make you right. No, that is not what facts can do. Facts do not have the power to wake up your normie friends, just as they don't have the power to wake up Tim Pool or Ben Shapiro. Let us continue. The President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. Well, you see, science and technology are part of our world. They're going to be part of our world for as long as we are in this world. And we have to understand how to interact with these things in a successful and productive and moral and responsible way, rather than allowing scientific materialists to run amok throughout this world, trying to figure out their little experiments that are going to save everybody, but actually kill everybody. And that is what they're doing. That is what they're always going to do. These people are dorks. They want to be powerful dorks the way that no one would ever let a dork be powerful unless that dork was promising to save the whole world and enriching people while they were doing it. And, that's how it works. So you don't give them power. You have to at least keep an eye on them. And if they get out of control, you shove them in a locker. President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. Man, and by the way, Hollywood is run by powerful dorks. And I think that I have probably a top 1% of the 1% level of experience with powerful dorks. All right. And you just can't let them do it. That is my conclusion. Stop them in their tracks as fast as you can. It's very easy to aid them in their cause as they enrich you. And it's better to be like, I don't think that that's really for me. The American story is one of boundless creativity and bold ambition, driven by an indomitable pioneering spirit that propels exploration and discovery. It is this spirit that illuminated the world with Edison's light bulb, carried the Wright brothers into the skies, and sent Armstrong to the moon. Okay. Today, a new frontier of scientific discovery lies before us, defined by transformative technologies such as artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and advanced biotechnology. And you got to love that. Transformative technologies. A new frontier of scientific discovery lies before us. Transformative technologies. So not Edison's light bulb and not some actor going to the moon. Breakthroughs in these fields have the potential to reshape the global balance of power, spark entirely new industries, and revolutionize the way we live and work. As our global competitors race to exploit these technologies, it is a national security imperative for the United States to achieve and maintain unquestioned and unchallenged global technological dominance. To secure our future, we must harness the full power of American innovation by empowering entrepreneurs, unleashing private sector creativity, and reinvigorating our research institutions. And by the way, I'm totally down with all of that. Okay. I don't like scientific materialism. I don't like the worship of science. I don't like trusting science. I do like innovation. Humans are going to be geared toward innovation always, because all of our survival mechanisms are still active, even if survival is no longer our main priority, because after that comes the potential for flourishing and helping others. And one of the ways that we do that on a massive scale is by figuring out better ways to do the things that we need to do. And all of that is natural, good, acceptable, as long as we don't override our other responsibilities to humanity and to morality and to God in the process. And all that means is that we have to maintain worshiping the right thing. And again, it's kind of funny with, some of the Bitcoin conversation and stuff. One of the main parts of soft war is that we should not worship God kings, which means political figures, people who are built up through abstractions of power or abstract power hierarchies. They end up at the top of those. All good. I'm totally in agreement with that. But part of the God King problem is that you're worshiping the wrong thing, right? And so if you're a scientific materialist, you have already made God Kings out of scientists. And that is very strange, because what are you thinking? You've basically made gods out of your priestly class. And in some sense, by the way, that's what Catholics did and do with the Pope. So it's funny that some of the inconsistencies with that line of thinking are a little unusual. And I don't know. I think that there will probably be much more to say about that in the future. It's one of the real debates that really matters in terms of the advance of technocracy and the advance of kind of some of this technology. And I do believe, as I've said many times before, that we are moving into something new, technologically speaking. And it only makes sense that we would be, because the regime has held back so much from our and prevented so much of our access to advanced technologies, so that they can control things, so that they can make resources scarce and expensive. These are control mechanisms over society. Of course, there is more we have not been exposed to, and it's going to be a necessity for us to be responsible about it. At the heart of scientific progress lies the pursuit of truth, but this foundational principle, which has driven every major breakthrough in our history, is increasingly under threat. And again, the censorship is the number one problem with that. Today, across science, medicine, technology, and ideological dogmas have surfaced that elevate group identity above individual achievement, enforce conformity at the expense of innovative ideas, and inject politics into the heart of the scientific method. These agendas have not only distorted truth, but have eroded public trust, undermined the integrity of research, stifled innovation, and weakened America's competitive edge. All of that is 100% true. That speaks in a way that a lot of people will take it toward DEI and wokeness and the rest of that. But the political agendas play a much bigger role in that than people might expect. The very deadly pandemic political agenda, that's not them saving us from diseases that are out there in the world. That is them creating existential threats to humanity and telling us that the only way we can avoid those existential threats, which means the only way for us to prevent the eradication of ourselves and everyone we've ever loved, is to do absolutely whatever they say all the time. And they present the same threats with nuclear weapons, with AI, and with climate change. It's all bullshit. And the sooner we realize it's all bullshit, the better off we are. But instead, we worship the science and we say, well, surely it's not all bullshit. Surely we can take on the role of God and destroy all of humanity for all time ourselves. Well, no, you can't. That's the whole point. You can't do that. And it doesn't matter what science does, you can't do that. And when science says it can do that, you should understand immediately, oh, these people are Satanists who are lying to me. This order establishes the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology to unite the brightest minds from academia, industry, and government to guide our nation through this critical moment by charting a path forward for American leadership in science and technology. And so he's going to create something called the PCAST, the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology, composed of not more than 24 members. The remaining members shall be distinguished individuals and representatives from sectors outside of the federal government. So there are appointed members from within the government, and then they have people from outside the federal government that are going to weigh in on these issues of science, education, and technology and innovation policy. And I am 100% on board with this. All right. We have to have people who actually know what they're doing in these fields, who have good intentions, who understand the agenda and the motivations behind the agenda, who understand President Trump's vision for the country, and who want to get together and push these ideas forward in productive, moral, responsible ways. Because we still, like, all of this is, it's still got to go on. We're still going to have problems in the future. Warring nations or whatever. There are going to be solutions that need to be provided, and we're going to innovate our way into those solutions. And so we need people who actually know what they're doing in all these fields to be able to tell us about them, right? If it was up to you or up to me to make these kinds of decisions, I wouldn't just go with, like, you know how most people understand that TikTok bad? They saw a Tucker Carlson segment on it 2 years ago. Or 3 years ago. I think it was 2021 or 2022. Or they understood that it was bad because Donald Trump said it first before totally reversing himself, obviously, because that's the point. He needs to do it to make TikTok, to make the proper things happen vis-a-vis TikTok. And then everybody else piles in for their own reasons, tries to reverse what Donald Trump does because they're anti-Trump, and Trump ends up winning the day. That's how it goes. But you would want, if you had to make a decision like that, believing that TikTok bad because you saw it on TV and read some bad articles about it from the mainstream media or from tech media, which is also mainstream media, you know, pursuing the same agenda as the rest of the media. Well, that would be a very, very bad way to make those kinds of decisions. And even if you went through and researched it really well yourself, still not a great way to make those decisions. You would want people from those businesses that can speak directly to what the technology is capable of doing and what it's not capable of doing, what needs it has as a business to pursue in this one way, and, you know, some of the downfalls potentially in the other way. You would need people like that around to be able to make good and responsible decisions as president. And so it should be encouraging that Donald Trump is putting something like this forward, while at the same time cutting off the CDC and the FDA and these other obviously corrupted bodies that call themselves science but aren't. Okay, the bodies that give all the research grants around the country. Does that mean I don't want research to be done at universities anymore? Well, I don't know. I'm open to that possibility as the right solution. I'm not sure it's the right one. But until then, we should at least have some better direction. We should be assured of some better direction on who's going to be making those decisions and what kind of research will be pursued. Because I don't know that we need to do just virology forever. Or, you know, climate research. I don't think we need to do climate research, and we don't need weather departments. We don't need to study COVID masks forever. Gosh, so much silly shit that they do and waste so much taxpayer money on. And the idea that all of these people in all of these universities are experts who are doing their absolute best to provide the world with solutions to real problems, give me a break. It's, there might be some people like that. There might be some people who started out like that and then just aren't like that in reality anymore. And that's probably the majority, sadly. And, it's one of those times that I don't mean to cast aspersions on everyone in an industry, but if you've made moral sacrifices and intellectual sacrifices to be able to keep your grants and your funding, you're part of the problem, period. There's no other part of it than beyond that, right? Like you've sacrificed the science at that point for whatever political agenda you have or for whatever personal motivation you have. And the people who did the thing during the COVID period where they said, well, if I left my job because of these moral atrocities that I'm being made responsible for and committing myself, if I left my job, other people would stay in the job and make money to do things that are even worse. I'm at least there defending some people. Are you? Or are you setting a standard for what other people are allowed to get away with because, you, the only person who might stand up, chose not to, and instead chose a lower standard of morality to adhere to so that you could maintain your job? Harsh questions, I understand, and maybe questions that make people uncomfortable. Again, I've done all the bad things before. Okay. So I understand what the bad things are. And that's why I say what the bad things are. And if you've done the bad things too, it's better to recognize that you did the bad things and not do them anymore and resign yourself to at least attempting to be much better than it is to pretend that you never did the bad things because other people did the bad things too. That means none of us are actually responsible for the bad things. We are all responsible for all of it, everything that we've done. And we should at least be honest about what these things are, because if they don't turn around, then nothing changes. All the lessons will have been for naught. I think people underestimate how easy it is for everybody to go to sleep and how many people are doing it. And like not even doing it accidentally, doing it because it is the most comfortable thing that they could possibly do. It's easy. People want it. If it was something that people didn't want, then the problem wouldn't exist. But it's just so much easier to live that way and guide your life by the incentive and punishment structure within the false reality. It'll never make you happy, but it is easier. And you do get to at least appease your vices, which is its own kind of inverted form of happiness. It's actually just pure sadness all the time. Okay, so I really do want to, let's do it this way. All right, let's do the World Economic Forum stuff because it is so interesting. I mean, again, this is one of those times where you think I'm blackpilling. I think you're crazy. Donald Trump took it right to the globalists yesterday. You would have to actually believe that Trump is just a tool of that system, dog walking us into this tech dystopia, to think that Donald Trump is not doing what he's doing while the world wakes up to these problems and then collectively pushes back and resists them. And I don't mean through collectivism. I just mean that once everybody is on the same page and it's not the regime's page, people are not going to want to go along with this shit. Yes, people will still go along with the incentive and punishment structures as they exist. Okay. There's no stopping that. That's just how life is. But everybody understanding that technocracy is actually the dystopia and that we must avoid it. And that these people who did COVID and did the rest of it are responsible for pushing us in that direction. And that Trump is the one waking everybody up so that we don't go down that path anymore. Then we can take Trump aside, understand him as our tribune. These are the things that we would have said to the world, including about the elections and stuff. You got to let the man do that exact thing. And he doesn't need any help doing it. I don't need to like any of the people on the fantasy team, any of the people in the administration. Their status means nothing to me. Nothing. Okay? I'm not going to judge Trump based on them. I'm going to judge them based on them. I know what the agenda is. I know what Trump's there to do. We've been watching him for years. We don't need to worry about him. Oh, Trump must really be slipping. He named this person who didn't do the right thing over at the Civil Rights Division of the DOJ. What a stupid conversation to have that would be. Oh, man, we don't like this person on the fantasy team. That means Donald Trump is the problem. No, he's not. The fantasy team is a product of negotiations, just like everything else. Incentives and punishments Negotiations. Trump has always made negotiation. These people are products of negotiations. He even came out and said it on one of those people. This isn't a pick for me. It's a pick for them. I can't remember who it was. It was some woman he appointed a few weeks ago. Relatively minor position. Judging Trump on those rather than judging the people would be preposterous, understanding that people suggest to him, please choose this guy. And they say, if you choose this guy, we're going to do X, Y, Z. And Trump will sit down and have a meeting with someone like David Sacks, who I don't trust at all. Okay. I don't think David Sacks' podcast is good. I don't think his Ukraine information is good. I don't think he hosted Ron DeSantis's coming out party on Twitter. I don't think there's anything good about David Sacks. All right. I don't care about David Sacks at all. I don't think he's a good selection to run that board. I don't think any of it. All right. I just think Trump put him there for a reason. Let's see how that goes. I'm not going to get angry at Trump for it. If people negotiate David Sacks into that position, maybe David Sacks is a great guy, maybe. But in case he's not, if people have negotiated him into that position and Trump gets what he gets and the nation sees what their motivation actually is, and then he removes David Sacks from that position, did Trump do a good thing or a bad thing by putting him in there? It's only a good thing, right? So then what would be the point in getting mad at Donald Trump? He has shown us a bad guy. He has shown us a bad agenda. He got whatever he got out of that person's period of service while getting the rest of what he was negotiating for. And all they get was a guy doing a job that Trump was going to have anybody do for a few months anyway. So that is a great deal for Donald Trump. That's a wonderful negotiation that he would take every time and that all of us should take every time too. And instead we're like, oh man, I don't know if we can trust Donald Trump anymore. He chose this guy for a job. Do you know what that job is? No, I don't, but it has a title. What are we doing? What are we doing? Okay, so let's do some clips from Donald Trump's speech. He appeared in a virtual address before the World Economic Forum in Davos. Klaus introduced him. Maybe let's go ahead and play Klaus introducing him, or just the end of it at least. Klaus is just so awful. He really is. So Trump starts talking about 2.5 minutes. Okay, so let's just start it. Let's start it right here. And then we're going to jump around to a bunch of spots. Again, what a wonderful speech. I don't know how you can see him presenting all of this before the most powerful people in the global regime, whether it's members of the World Economic Forum, the people in attendance, or all the transnational corporate partners. Again, we went through it the other day. There's like 1,000 major corporations and, of course, governments all around the world that are partner organizations of the World Economic Forum. And so Donald Trump is not just speaking to the people attending. He's not just speaking to the heads of those corporations. He's talking about the whole thing. Here we are.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
Well, thank you very much, Klaus, and hello to everyone in beautiful Davos.
Well, thank you very much, Klaus. What are you supposed to say? People are going to say that Donald Trump is in league with these people, as they did last time. We're going to see that online. People are talking about it. Donald Trump is always tied to those higher ups. He's just their servant. Again, these are all people who think that they are smarter than Donald Trump and know more than Donald Trump. I don't know where the respect is that he's given to them. I didn't see it yesterday on display in any aspect of that speech. And what would people have him do instead? Not appear? Do they not want him making this case to these people's faces at their special little conference? I'm happy that he does it. Why would anybody be unhappy about this? I don't get it. Let's take a look at some of the highlights.
Companies likewise have announced billions and billions and billions, adding up to trillions of investment in America, in the United States. And it's also reported today in the papers that Saudi Arabia will be investing at least $600 billion in America, but I'll be asking the Crown Prince, who's a fantastic guy, to round it out to around $1 trillion. I think they'll do that because we've been very good to them. And I'm also going to ask Saudi Arabia and OPEC to bring down the cost of oil. You got to bring it down, which, frankly, I'm surprised they didn't do before the election. That didn't show a lot of love by them not doing it.
Okay, so let's just pause there for a second. He's talking about bringing trillions and trillions of dollars in from around the world. What's going to happen to our national debt? It's going to be gone. Bringing in that kind of money from around the world, bringing in $500 billion from Larry Ellison and SoftBank and OpenAI, bringing in $600 billion, as was reported from Mohammed bin Salman. He just upped it to $1 trillion. Do you think it's going to be $1 trillion or $600 billion? I think it's probably going to be $1 trillion. I don't see a way that they're just doing this because they're investing in the United States of America. This sounds like what I have been calling drainage for many years. And I think it's important to recognize that. He also called Mohammed bin Salman a fantastic guy. The regime tried to paint Mohammed bin Salman as a brutal murderer. They said that he ordered his intelligence services to kidnap a reporter named Jamal Khashoggi and cut him up into little tiny pieces. And then they pretended to release the audio of that to the world. All to slam Mohammed bin Salman. Joe Biden went over there and got a fist bump from MBS. MBS is a powerful figure in what my friends, I think, rightly call the Sovereign Alliance. He is a leader of a sovereign nation. He has rejected the regime in full, and he has gone after the corrupt elements in Saudi Arabia, including within the Saudi royal family, like Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, or bin Talal Al-Walid. I always say that backwards. Xi Jinping's been doing the same thing in China, by the way. And so to think that all of these are the bad guys, like the TV tells us, rather than a fantastic guy like Trump has told us, that's crazy. Will the money come in? Well, probably not in cash. The debt is a series of accounting figures. The debt is to the global regime. It's not necessarily to any country in particular. They're just moving money around within this planned economy to whatever place deserves this or that money. They shift it around. Oh, you're going to pay this here. You're going to pay this here. Recall when Fox settled with Dominion, knowing that in the discovery documents in that case, Dominion admits that its machines can't produce a reliable result for an election outcome. It's in the documents. So Fox can't lose a defamation suit for saying that very thing on television. So instead, they just turn over $787 million to Dominion. And somehow Dominion's still going broke. Isn't that weird? It's all just accounting figures anyway. But very good relationship with Saudi Arabia, getting a whole lot of money in from Saudi Arabia. And now he's going to talk about the coming down of the oil prices and how that affects the prolonging of the Ukraine, quote unquote, war.
A little surprised by that. If the price came down, the Russia-Ukraine war would end immediately. Right now, the price is high enough that that war will continue. You got to bring down the oil price. You got to end that war. They should have done it long ago. They're very responsible, actually, to a certain extent, for what's taking place. Millions of lives are being lost. With oil prices going down, I'll demand that interest rates drop immediately, and likewise, they should be dropping all over the world. Interest rates should follow us. All over, the progress that you're seeing is happening because of our historic victory in a recent presidential election, one that has become quite well known throughout the world. I think a lot of things are happening to a lot of countries. They say that there's light shining all over the world since the election, and even countries that we aren't particularly friendly with are happy because they understand what there is a future and how great the future will be. Under our leadership, America is back and open for business.
America is back and open for business under Trump's leadership. He blamed OPEC for the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, I mean, we can have discussions about what the actual impact was of, the energy trade for Russia and Ukraine and how that might have provided Russia the resources it needed to carry on the war. But realistically, what we're being told is going on over there is not going on over there. So to then allow the rest of the story to be unpacked as though it was seems a little silly to me. It's just another one of those places that Donald Trump, by the way, describes as something that looks like a demolition zone, just like he describes Los Angeles and Israel and Gaza as well. A lot of demolition zones around the country, around the world, aren't there? Kind of makes it seem like what I was saying last week. From the right perspective, from high enough up, it's just a construction zone. Depending on your perspective, that is a construction zone. There are construction zones. And it sounds cold and insensitive, I understand. All right. I'm not saying that we should necessarily talk about them that way. Like if people are expressing that their cousin was, the house next to the fire or anything, I understand that. But if we're trying to understand these things in the way that the people controlling the situations understand them, well, then that's how it can be understood. They have construction projects planned. So whatever we're being shown as a war is questionable at best. So Donald Trump right there talked about interest rates coming down. And there was an incredible moment from the Oval Office yesterday where he was asked about the interest rates coming down. Here we are.
There's too much going on at once if you're trying to bring interest rates down, get the economy back going.
It just works that way. I mean, it just economically works that way. When the oil comes down, it'll bring down prices. Then you won't have inflation, and then the interest rates will come down.
You said that you would demand that the interest rates come down.
Well,
do you expect
I
the
would put in a strong statement.
Do you expect the Fed to listen to you?
Yeah.
Are you going to talk to Powell about this and bringing the rates down?
At the right time, I would.
Let's watch that reaction one more time.
Well,
I would.
Do you expect
I
the
would
Fed?
put in a strong statement.
Do you expect the Fed to listen to you?
Yeah.
Are you going to talk to Powell about this and bringing the rates?
Yeah. Yeah, of course they're going to listen to me, is what he's saying. Well, yeah, of course they're listening to me because they have to listen to me because I took the Fed and took the IRS and brought them back under the U.S. Treasury. They are no longer institutions of the global regime. When did he do it? Years ago. Did anybody listen to us when we said that? No. Did everybody keep paying their taxes to pedophiles? Yes. Getting rid of the IRS, replacing it with the ERS, the External Revenue Service, to manage international tariffs for trade. Wonderful. The Fed is going to listen to him because they have to listen to him. He didn't even take the question seriously. Yes. I know. The Fed is independent. Isn't it weird that regime media has told us for so long that the Fed is independent? Like the president, if he weighs in, is being a very, very bad boy. Really is pretty incredible how these things have been shown to us over all these many years. But yeah, I love that Fed clip from Trump. It's just fantastic. So we spoke about the Ukraine war just a second ago. Let me get our little timestamp here on the old YouTube. Here we are.
Our efforts to secure a peace settlement between Russia and Ukraine are now hopefully underway. It's so important to get that done. That is an absolute killing field. Millions of soldiers are being killed. Nobody's seen anything like it since World War II. They're laying dead all over the flat fields. It's a flat field farmland, and there's millions of Russians and millions of...
I got to say, he mentions how flat Ukraine is almost every time he talks about it. And I saw people bringing it up initially, and I was like, all right, but come on. He does it every time. He does it every time. He says the land is so flat, the only thing that'll stop a bullet is a body. Very, very strange. Maybe he's talking about building projects. Maybe he's saying the whole earth's flat. I have no idea. But he says it all the time. He says it.
Of Ukrainians, and nobody's seen anything like it since World War II. It's time to end it. And here in America, we have big events coming up. Next year, we have the 250th anniversary of America's founding. I'm so honored to be president during that. That's been a big event. They've been talking about it for 10 years. We also have the World Cup. And I understand Gianni's in the room. Infantino, he was very instrumental in helping us get it. He's there with you someplace, I think. And I want to thank him for that. And then we have the Olympics coming up, which I was instrumental in getting also in my first term. And who would have known that by skipping a term, I would get the Olympics? I was upset. I said, you know, I got the Olympics to come and I won't be president. But it turned out through a stroke of luck, or whatever you might call it, that I'm going to be president during the World Cup and the Olympics and the 250th anniversary. So that's going to be 3 big events.
Who knew that by skipping a term, I would get the World Cup, the Olympics, and the 250th birthday party of the United States? Maybe you could call it luck, or who knows what, a stroke of luck. Skipping the middle term. Let's just listen to it again. Gosh, it's funny. Isn't he funny? What is he talking about? He's just using these euphemisms,
which wouldn't have happened without us, as I think most of the people in the room know. Earlier this week, the hostages began to return to their families. They are returning, and it's a beautiful sight, and they'll be coming in more and more. They started coming back on Sunday. Our efforts to secure a peace settlement between Russia and Ukraine are now hopefully underway. It's so important to get that done. That is an absolute killing field. Millions of soldiers are being killed. Nobody's seen anything like it since World War II. They're laying dead all over the flat fields. It's a flat field farmland, and there's millions of Russians and millions of Ukrainians. And nobody's seen anything like it since World War II. It's time to end it. And here in America, we have big events coming up. Next year, we have the 250th anniversary of America's founding. I'm so honored to be president during that. That's been a big event. They've been talking about it for 10 years. We also have the World Cup. And I understand Gianni's in the room. Infantino, he was very instrumental in helping us get it. He's there with you someplace, I think. And I want to thank him for that. And then we have the Olympics coming up, which I was instrumental in getting also in my first term. And who would have known that by skipping a term, I would get the Olympics? I was upset. I said, you know, I got the Olympics to come and I won't be president. But it turned out through a stroke of luck, or whatever you might call it, that I'm going to be president during the World Cup and the Olympics and the 250th anniversary. So that's going to be 3 big events.
Sorry, I skipped back way too far there. Apologies to make you listen to all that over again. And, you know, but it's Trump. It's not too torturous. It's usually pretty hilarious. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? He's in this magical 3rd term after skipping 1 term by a stroke of luck, or who knows what it was. And now he's going to get to be president for the World Cup, the Olympics, and the 250th birthday of America, all at the same time in America. Now, he's taking credit for getting all of those things, and maybe there's some credit that goes his way for getting all of that. Or maybe that was just part of the whole Build Back Better thing. And now their Build Back Better is going to be totally attributed to Donald Trump and the America First agenda, and to MAGA, and to these American principles that we have held on to and used to guide this movement, rather than the principles of the regime and the America that has been thrust upon us over the course of our lives. All of this production, all of this growth, all of the building back better will be credited to Donald Trump and to America First, rather than to the global regime and its system. And so it's going to be a matter of perception ultimately. And people feel very weird about that. I'm one of the people who feel very weird about that, because that agenda is still marching forward. It never stopped marching forward. And the people in that room still believe that they're going to figure out ways to outlast Trump and outlast that agenda and get the global thing back on schedule. Or they believe that no matter what he is doing, their system is already locked into place. And despite whatever hiccups he might provide, it'll be just fine. So, you know, everybody's like, we've already won. Well, in some sense, we have already won, but in the sense where the only thing that matters is people's minds. And if this is really only a war between narratives and a battle of stories, then that's the only thing that can possibly matter. It really is going to matter what the perception of all of this is. And so the idea here, it's becoming now very clear. Donald Trump will be given credit for all of these things. Donald Trump will be presenting these things in a pro-American way. And that's going to be an entirely different impact on public perception than what it would have been otherwise. Imagine if Kamala was there, or Hillary Clinton, or Michelle Obama, with the Olympics going and all of the propaganda that NBC News always gives us about the Olympics, about the World Cup, about the 250th birthday of America. Rather than hearing we would be taking a return to our founding, we would be hearing instead how our founding was fundamentally flawed, and that we had a second founding at the Civil War, but now it's time for this new resurgence after this age of Donald Trump and this age of nationalism. Trump is Hitler. Trump is the Nazi, and blah, blah, blah. Are we still going to get that? I don't know, but I do know that we've seen pictures like this many times throughout our lives. Look at that. He's doing the Elon Musk gesture. The man with the little mustache right here is doing the Elon Musk. That's Hitler at the Olympics. Remember how famous Hitler was for the Olympics? And remember how famous Jesse Owens was? Because Jesse Owens, the American sprinter, the black man, won at the Hitler racist Olympics. I think there is a picture. Let me just find it while we hold for processing. Oh, yeah. Yeah, here it is. Gosh, it's so strange, this picture. Can hardly imagine how this picture would have ever appeared in reality, but Jesse Owens with Hitler? Is that Hitler? Huh. Hitler and Jesse Owens. Jesse Owens and Hitler shook hands. Let's see what Snopes has to say about it. I've never actually gone to a fact check of this. I would never want to spread disinformation. Why won't it give me the website? There we are. Oh, it's a hoax. They say it's a hoax. While the image of Hitler and Owens is an obvious fake. Hold on. He was steered toward the box of Chancellor Hitler, in which was also seated Herr Streicher, Germany's #1 hater. What? The writers stood up from their seats to get a better view of that meeting. Owens was merely led below the honor box, where he smiled and bowed, and Herr Hitler gave him a friendly little Nazi salute, the sitting down one with the arm bent. The birth of the Hitler snub. While it's true that Hitler did not publicly congratulate Owens, there are squabbles over the defining moment as a snub. Oh, gosh. Owens did say he felt snubbed, but not by Hitler. What in the world? Hitler is honoring the pledge, believe it or not. Apologies. This sounds like one of those fact checks that doesn't really fact check things. And if you're screaming at me in the chat with an answer, by all means, please tell me. I'm assuming that one or many of you have already actually dug on that. The Olympic symbol was designed by a Nazi, says maybe. That's very interesting. It wouldn't surprise me a bit. Jesse Owens was innocent, naive, maybe. I don't know what that's in reference to. Hitler gave kudos for Jesse Owens winning. Supposedly that's what Jesse Owens said years later. So I guess there's some dispute about whether or not this fact check is legitimate, and maybe we'll find out one day. But regardless, they made a big deal about an Olympics being held in Nazi Germany under Hitler, and I can expect that we'll get some of that similar treatment for Donald J. Trump at some point in the future. This is, Trump mentioned the election. Klaus Schwab called it a mandate. Vladimir Putin weighed in on the 2020 election today as well. Check this out.
to say that Russia never refused to come into contact with the United States administration. And it is through no fault of ours that the previous administration refused to communicate. I always had business-like relations with the previous US president that were very business-like and pragmatic. But there was trust as well. Now, if he had been the president, if the victory wasn't stolen from him in 2020, maybe the Ukrainian crisis that arose in 2022 would have never appeared.
How about that? Putin agrees with Donald Trump that the Ukrainian crisis would have never appeared had the election not been stolen from Donald Trump. Vladimir Putin just said that the election was stolen from Trump. Does he know that to be true? Yes, of course he does. I have said for 3 or 4 years on this show, and anyone who has listened to the show for a long time has probably heard me go through it. There's absolutely no way that Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping believe that Joe Biden received 81 million real lawful American votes. They have big, powerful countries to run. They have their own intelligence agencies, and they're not retarded. They don't get their information from CNN. They don't believe election results of fake elections because the New York Times tells them, Edison Research says Joe Biden, 81 million. Everybody's like, well, I guess he must have got 81 million. What are we going to do? Tear down all our institutions? Can you imagine Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping or Mohammed bin Salman or Viktor Orban or Jair Bolsonaro, any of them believing Lil Kim Jong-un, Rocket Man, the dopest dude on the entire planet, just hanging out with his hot tub monkeys? Can you imagine them believing that Joe Biden got 81 million real lawful American votes? You think they don't know how the world works just because we don't know how it works? It's crazy. They know Joe Biden wasn't a real president. They know Joe Biden didn't have the force of the American military behind him. It's a joke. It's a joke. Joe Biden was never president. If he was anything, he existed only on that false reality layer. The same way that Juan Guaido was president in Venezuela. The same way that Ukraine is a real sovereign country, or Guyana or Taiwan or Hong Kong. They're global regime proxy states, Israel. The maps were drawn a certain way. The global regime was able to incentivize certain countries through direct payoffs, through corruption, through compromise, through economic sanctions, through the manipulation of trade or resources, or through military action. They kept countries under the sway of the global regime umbrella and doing the bidding of the global regime. And so certain countries, certain leaders called Joe Biden president, and global media presented Joe Biden as president. And people who don't know anything about how anything works around the world called Joe Biden president. Joe Biden's not president. He was never president. Look at Vladimir Putin. He knows. How is it that all these leaders kept the world order essentially the same as it was when Donald Trump left it? Why didn't they implement anti-Trump policies? Well, because Trump's deals were put in place and remained in place. Did they know he was coming back? They believed that America had a real election that Donald Trump lost, and that despite Donald Trump stepping into the background and leaving and the establishment beginning to push up all these other candidates, that Donald Trump was going to run again and that he was going to win again. And then when he won again, he would have enough power behind him to be able to put those policies back in or start exacting different kinds of punishment for people who jumped off the program. How come none of that happened? There's only one answer. It's that Joe Biden was never actually president. None of them believed it. They control over half the world's population and over half the world's economic activity. To the extent that there is our democracy worldwide, they're the majority, not the regime. And of course, there's no democracy worldwide. It's just a collection of countries that are either centralized under this kind of governing superstate with a global agenda that controls global media and global finance, or they're not under that thing. That thing is no longer the majority. Donald Trump is not on the side of that thing. And they don't have access to the American military anymore, and they haven't for 4 years. So what does that mean? The elections aren't real. Joe Biden was never president. We were taken for a ride. We were told a story, and to counteract that story, we were told another story. And we ultimately chose that one of those stories maps onto reality better than the other one. And now we go along with that story. And that's it. That's all that happened. Let's continue. This why so much Wang, indeed. Okay. So where are we going here? Putin. Yes. This is wonderful. And as you listen to this clip on denuclearization, consider the good twin, evil twin dynamic worldwide, and consider that nuclear does not mean nuclear weapons. We need to grow out of this childish notion. Listen to how he discusses this and tell me if it makes any sense that nuclear weapons are what he is talking about.
We'd like to see denuclearization. In fact, with President Putin prior to an election result, which was frankly ridiculous, we were talking about denuclearization of our two countries, and China would have come along. China has a much smaller right now nuclear armament than us, or field than us, but they're going to be catching it at some point over the next 4 or 5 years. And I will tell you that President Putin really liked the idea of cutting way back on nuclear. And I think the rest of the world, we would have gotten them to follow. And China would have come along too. China also liked it. Tremendous amounts of money are being spent on nuclear. And the destructive capability is something that we don't even want to talk about today because you don't want to hear it. It's too depressing. So we want to see if we can denuclearize, and I think that's very possible. And I can tell you that President Putin wanted to do it. He and I wanted to do it. We had a good conversation with China. They would have been involved, and that would have been an unbelievable thing for the planet.
Isn't that incredible? So if Trump hadn't had the 2020 election rigged and stolen, as he just reiterated, something ridiculous, an unbelievable, ridiculous result. That's the room of powerful people who pretended that Joe Biden was president. Anyone in that room with any mature understanding should know that Joe Biden did not receive 81 million real lawful American votes. And you would think that people with power at that level would just be playing along with it because of their incentive and punishment structure. And that is very likely true in all of those cases, regardless of whether or not they were treating it all as real. And I know some wealthy and powerful people who treated every bit of it as real. And that's unfortunate because it speaks to what the knowledge base is among people in that stratosphere. Very, very unsettling. But he talks about how the election was rigged. He says that Russia and the United States would have been in a process of denuclearization, and China would have joined as well. So those are your three major world superpowers: Russia, the United States, and China. All of the major world superpowers that the communists spent the 20th century trying to take over, and the place they were, they were successful for a time in Russia, then they were successful for a time in China, and the entire time we pretended that they were having no success here, that the thing wasn't even happening. And that's because they actually accomplished it so well here and had already accomplished it before that. We were already intimately tied into that global regime. So we didn't have to have the same bad treatment that the Bolsheviks brought to Russia, or that the communists brought to China. We didn't have that same kind of treatment. We were already totally infiltrated, and we were just like, yeah, sure, we'll hire your Nazi scientists. That sounds great. You want us to go to war and crush all these other countries around the world that are trying to resist you? Yep, we got you. You want us to supply the your entire European continent with whatever money it needs to let its citizens take a never-ending siesta, oh, we'll work our asses off for that. They got it the easy way. They didn't have to take it the hard way. So we have the world's superpowers willing to denuclearize. Where was the regime input? Well, it would have been nowhere. Trump and Putin and Xi could have just denuclearized with no problem whatsoever. How would they do that? Probably just tell people, oh, hey, guys, that whole nuclear weapon thing, bullshit. And I eventually think that that's probably going to be what happens at some point once the Elon of it all and the Trump of it all kind of wears into people's understanding of how these things go. What is it going to be when everybody realizes that actually these people that are like called violent dictators by the media are totally down with denuclearization, while those who are saying that we have to protect the sovereign borders of Ukraine are telling us all the time that we are on the verge of a nuclear disaster that's going to destroy everybody. And while we're at it, if nuclear weapons are real and countries beyond Russia, China, and the United States have them, if they denuclearize, what's going to happen with the other countries? Are they going to get rid of their nukes too? Why wouldn't they immediately be like, ha, 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 you idiots. We have nuclear weapons that can destroy the whole world at one time, all of humanity. And now, since you got rid of yours, like dumbasses, give us all your stuff or we're going to destroy you. Is that going to happen? No, it's not going to happen. Why? Because the whole thing's bullshit. Let's continue. Donald Trump discusses the European Union. This entire speech is just Donald Trump listing ways that he is destroying globalism. You got to understand that. Maybe I didn't put that into clear enough terms at the beginning. Everything he says throughout this entire speech, and there's like 45 minutes total. There's about a 15-minute speech, 14, 15 minutes. And then he takes questions from the panel they have there on stage. And so the whole thing lasts about 40, 45 minutes. Every bit of it is Donald Trump telling the globalists that globalism is no more.
America, the EU treats us very, very unfairly, very badly. They have a large tax that we know about and a VAT tax, and it's a very substantial one. They don't take essentially don't take our farm products, and they don't take our cars, yet they send cars to us by the millions. They put tariffs on things that we want to do. Like, for instance, I think they actually, in terms of these are non-economic or non-monetary tariffs, and those are very bad, and they make it very difficult to bring products into Europe, and yet they expect to be selling, and they do sell their products in the United States. So we have, hundreds of billions of dollars of deficits with the EU, and nobody's happy with it, and we're going to do something about it, but nobody's happy with it. So I think the EU has to speed up their process. Friends of mine that are in some of the nations within the EU, great people, they want to be able to compete better, and you can't compete when you can't go through the approval process fast. There's no reason why it can't go faster. So, I'm trying to be constructive because I love Europe. I love the countries of Europe, but the process is a very cumbersome one. And they do treat the United States of America very, very unfairly with the VAT taxes and all of the other taxes they impose. One other, just to finish up, I got a call from the head of a major airline, one of the biggest airlines in the world. And he said, "Sir, could you help us? What? Landing in Europe is brutal. They charge us fees for everything, and it's so unfair." I said, "How does it compare to China?" He said, it's much worse. And
going right after the EU. And that's, that's like the crown jewel of all of it. I mean, you got Israel, you got the EU. The EU, obviously a centralization of these various states with their own different cultures and histories, trying to create a melting pot out of it. And we see what that brings. And we're like, oh, no. You see, the centralization, it only really works here in America. Does it work? Did the centralization work? Or is the centralization part of the problem? And of course, it's part of the problem. And it's obviously the problem in the EU. It's much easier to see it there, I suppose, because we don't have to think about how it reflects on us. But the idea that this is the best system that the world has ever known and the best system that can ever exist, we're not even in that system anymore. If it was that way at the founding, it's certainly not now. And people are like, well, we're the only country with a constitution like this. That is just not true. There are other countries with their constitutions modeled on our constitution, and they are even more regime friendly than our constitution is, intentionally, because they've learned lessons over time about the sorts of things they want to install in these constitutions to make them even more regime friendly. And then when you look at our constitution and you think, hey, how does ours compare to theirs? You'll see that there's all sorts of little mechanisms in our constitution that make it just like theirs. And our society then is just like theirs. And of course, they want one system for everything. They're going to put the same system in everywhere. It's not because it's the best system for protecting our liberty and security and property. Oh, man, it's crazy. It really is a crazy time. And it's not like I just love saying these things. I wish that, these things that we revered throughout our lives were worthy of our reverence. But it turns out that once again, the only one that actually is the one that, our culture has taught us to ignore, which is God. And instead we worship the state, and the state's founding documents. It's an inversion, and it's an inversion that happened for a reason. And that reason is because the people who control our society from much higher up than the position of president or anything in our government are attempting to reverse Christianity. And our understanding of God. Let us continue here. I talked about how, all of this was an attack on the globalist system. Here, Trump rattles off some changes that he has made already in 4 days.
On our border immediately halted all entry of illegal border crossers, of which there were many, and began promptly returning the illegal trespassers back to the place from which they came. That action, as you've probably seen, has already started very strongly. Have deployed active duty U.S. military and National Guard troops to the border to assist in repelling the invasion. It was really an invasion. We will not allow our territory to be violated. After 4 long years, the United States is strong and sovereign and a beautiful nation. Once again, it's a strong, sovereign nation. In addition, I'm pleased to report that America is also a free nation once again. On day one, I saw.
Okay. I wanted to let that line get in there too. We are a strong, sovereign nation. We are a strong, sovereign nation. And I'm happy to announce that America is free again. And then he gets into censorship right here. He repeats that we are a strong, sovereign nation to the World Economic Forum, to the global regime, directly to their faces. He says we are a strong, sovereign nation. That is the opposite of a one world, unipolar, rules-based, liberal, international, blah, 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 world order. This is the opposite. Donald Trump has taken us out of that. He is announcing to them that we are out of it. We are a strong sovereign nation, and we are a free nation.
Signed an executive order to stop all government censorship. No longer will our government label the speech of our own citizens as misinformation or disinformation, which are the favorite words of censors and those who wish to stop the free exchange of ideas and, frankly, progress. We have saved free speech in America, and we've saved it strongly. With another historic executive order this week, I also ended the weaponization of law enforcement against the American people and, frankly, against politicians, and restored the fair, equal, and impartial rule of law. My administration has taken action to abolish all discriminatory diversity, equity, and inclusion nonsense. And these are policies that were absolute nonsense throughout the government and the private sector. With the recent yet somewhat unexpected great Supreme Court decision just made, America will once again become a merit-based country. You have to hear that word, merit-based country. And I've made it official, an official policy of the United States, that there are only two genders, male and female. And we will have no men participating in women's sports, and transgender operations, which became the rage, will occur very rarely. Finally, as we restore common sense in America, we're moving quickly to bring back strength and peace and stability abroad.
I mean, that runs through a big chunk of the agenda and social agenda too. And all of that is opposite to the global regime agenda. Every bit of that is opposite. And he's throwing it in their faces and rubbing it in their faces, especially the gender stuff, because that should be a source of shame and embarrassment for these people. And it should be for us in our country as well. But worldwide, that's how that should be presented now. And for a time, it was presented as like this source of virtue and tolerance and the rest of these qualities that are supposed to be good qualities, good character qualities that really aren't. It was a sign and a symptom of all that. It was treated as something honorable. It's not being treated that way anymore. And these are the people who spent all their time pushing that agenda worldwide. It's incredible to bring it right to their faces. This isn't even this is the proper venue for this. It needs to be said directly in front of the world, and these people need to hear it. And when the incentive structure collapses for the implementation of all this in these WEF partner organizations, in the corporations with these partner governments, when the incentive structure has collapsed for the United States, and China's not on board, and Russia's not on board, and Saudi's not on board, and Brazil's not on board, and all of the major world superpowers have taken themselves out of this system, what do you have left? What do you have left? The British Commonwealth, that is like in the nations in Africa and Southeast Asia and South America are just removing the European colonial powers all the time. They've got nothing left. How can they even operate? The agenda is being just trashed publicly now. It's wonderful to see. And Trump did this, and the people behind him did this, and the inner circle did this. The rest of it, I don't know. Couple clips left, and then we will wrap up. Gosh, we're almost hitting 3 hours, and I didn't even get to any of the immigration and cartel stuff. So crazy. Okay, 2 clips left on the list. Hold for processing.
You're going to bring it down to 15%, which is really something. And
talking about corporate taxes.
And you've done a fantastic job, but I hope you start opening your bank to conservatives, because many conservatives complain that the banks are not allowing them to do business within the bank, and that included a place called Bank of America. They don't take conservative business. And I don't know if the regulators mandated that because of Biden or what, but you and Jamie and everybody, I hope you're going to open your banks to conservatives, because what you're doing is wrong.
Mr. President, I'll say that your friend Gianni said hello, told me to tell you hello, and we look forward to sponsoring the World Cup when it comes, both this summer for the club and next year. So thank you for getting that for the United States.
So CEO of Bank of America, Trump takes it right to him and says you were debanking conservatives. That was widely reported. General Flynn, Eric Prince. I know there are some others who kind of piped in and were like, because Bank of America put out a statement that they would never do that. And of course they welcome conservatives. And so that was the response. And I mean, they definitely announced it at the time. This is an old thing with Bank of America. They're going to be, as he says, a title sponsor for the World Cup and for the Olympics, perhaps. I guess we'll see how they look at that point. And when they talk about banking with conservatives, this is not in any way to slight any of the people who were debanked by them. I don't think that the big fish is the consumer banking customer, the individual American with some conservative opinions expressed online who's being debanked. The banks, part of the manipulation from the global regime standpoint, this is what it's always been, part of the control of the finance, the sanctions, and the rest of it, is that the banks are on board with the regime agenda. And that includes corporate investors and people trying to take out large sums of money, need loans for businesses. They need their financing done, whatever it is. I think that that's probably what some of this is aiming at. People who are not in line with the regime's agenda. I mean, the judgment was all whether or not the companies were aligned with the agenda, and the customers too on some level. And they have the ability to monitor those sorts of things within the country through these social credit scores that social media companies can provide. It's definitely a problem. It's part of the censorship. It's part of it's a tool that encourages self-censorship, because there is a punishment presented that's going to happen to you if you go outside of these bounds, and it prevents people from doing it. It prevents people from doing the right thing because they know they're going to get punished. And anytime those restrictions come off and business is allowed to flourish without that manipulation, I think we're probably better off. And it's certainly closer to a free market approach. I mean, the free market approach lets Bank of America say, no, we don't want to do business with those people. That's fine. If they don't want the business, maybe that's their thing. But they've been outed now, and I would expect there to be some movement on this. And hopefully companies will not have to be part of the World Economic Forum and down with that agenda and in alignment with their code of conduct in order to be able to receive financing from these major world banks. And one last clip. He also took the Green New Scam right to them, and that's quite a soundbite as well. And these are, again, things that he said a number of times, but it's about him saying them right there in front of these people. That's what makes all the difference in the world. And it's what makes a speech like this worth watching, and potentially the sort of thing that people will be watching for many decades, as the story of Trump is distorted and mistold in the media. This is not the Hitler story, all right? Because that's what they're going to try to change it into. This is not about nationalism specifically, although it is about being a sovereign nation. And it's certainly not about socialism and the government solving everyone's problems. It is about the removing of government as the obvious solution to problems. And if problems arise, then replacing it with another kind of government. This is about the government getting out of all of these affairs, about the global regime, the global government being removed from the affairs of these nations. And the United States is considerably more powerful in their ability to do that than nations have been in times past. And especially with Russia and China doing the same thing, and many of these other nations doing the same thing. And it is quite clear that they are not going to be able to cut the United States out from the global finance system, from the global trade, not, global, but whatever. During Trump's time in office. And Brian and I discussed on Daily this morning some of the attacks against different industries that we're probably going to see in the United States over these few months will be to try to cripple that economy under Donald Trump, maybe even with companies that are totally aligned with the regime agenda. Because, hey, if you destroy your business, we're going to give you all this money and allow you to rebuild in whatever way you'd like. You're actually going to profit from this. Maybe a lot of companies are like, okay, yeah, destroy my business. That'll be fine. You'll take care of me in the future. The fiat currency allows them to do that. And the more we move away from that, the better off we are. Here is the last clip, Trump on the Green New Scam.
It's all taking effect. It's going to have a huge impact on the economy, a huge positive impact. Money was being wasted on crazy things. I mean, the Green New Deal was such a total disgrace. How that was perpetrated, and it was conceived of by people that were average students, less than average students, I might add, and never even took a course in energy or the environment. It was just a game. Remember, the world was going to end in 12 years. Remember that? Well, the 12 years has come and gone. It was going to end. It was going to all foam into earth. But, you know, the time has come. These people, and they really scared the Democrats large. I can't say the Republicans. The Republicans maybe could have fought harder to stop it, but it's been a tremendous waste of money. You know, during my
Remember, the world was going to end in 12 years, and it didn't end. Here we are. He's saying it right to them. Those are the people that came up with the Green New Deal, with the climate change agenda, who talk about sustainability and climate change and pandemics all the time. You can go in and read Klaus Schwab's book, COVID-19, The Great Reset, and you can see that. You can see all of this agenda. Let's actually just take one quick look at the UN 2030 agenda. It is really impressive to see it all right there. The 17 goals for sustainable development. And this is what is being taken apart by Donald Trump, the sovereign movement worldwide. Gender equality. The education, of course, is just indoctrination. No poverty. How are they going to do that? Communism, basic income, kill poor people, zero hunger. Sure, you're going to feel they could fix those problems, by the way, just by opening up systems. They don't do that. They impoverish nations intentionally to punish those people so that their governments can be overthrown. Sanitation and drinking water is certainly obviously possible. Sustainable communities, they repeat things like this over and over again. Reduced inequalities, affordable and clean energy, climate action, life below water, life on land. So these are their 17 goals, and they have all of the global agenda to achieve those goals. And Donald Trump is refuting and removing absolutely all of it. It is a return to Americanism. It is the end of globalism. And I think we should all be very happy about that. Donald Trump is doing all of this in his capacity only as president, only with the mandate from the people. We don't have real elections. The Senate and the Congress don't matter at all. They're illegitimate, or should be seen as illegitimate, even if there's some way that some of them are legitimate. There's no way to affirm that either of those bodies are legitimate in any capacity. We are not operating under that Constitution. We should be mature enough to at least admit it and try to understand what the actual status in the real world is right now. And we can see that no matter what the status of our government is, Donald Trump is doing everything necessary to remove us from that dystopian picture that was being portrayed for however long now, 10 years, 20 years. This is many, many decades in. The American part of it has kind of really shown itself truly for what it is over these last 6 years. You could say from Obama, maybe from 9/11. You can go back further, but man, it's all coming down right before our eyes. And I think we can all be very, very happy about that. Thankful to Donald Trump, but also thankful that our fellow Americans have begun to understand these things and speak up, because the public mandate doesn't exist with Donald Trump alone. It requires MAGA. It requires the American people. And that's the sort of thing that cannot be achieved as a result of fake elections. It can only be achieved as the result of people speaking up. So that is what we should continue to do. Figure out what it's all about and continue to encourage others to do the same. And with that, I hope you guys all have a wonderful weekend. I will, there are no Rumble rants as far as I can see. Thank you all very much for your time and your attention and tuning in and supporting the show and the rest of what I do and the rest of what Badlands does. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And with that, I will be back on Monday at the same reasonable time, same reasonable podcast network. I don't have a network. Masks and lockdowns don't work. They lied to you about a pandemic. Joe Biden was never president.
Well,
what?
You know who I am, don't you? Well, you ain't Fiona Apple, and if you ain't Fiona Apple, I don't give a rat's ass.
And what's wrong with being an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times? What do you think, Max?
Do you want to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times?
Yeah, I think I'd like to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times.
It's not true. It's more true than I would perhaps prefer.
I will not let you down.
We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
What must be what?
In my mind, that's the end game.
If you're listening for free and would like to support the show, the best way to do that is by signing up for a paid subscription at imyourmoderator.substack.com. You can find the info stream over on Telegram at t.me/veryreasonable. The merch site is cancelcouture.com, and for all my other links, you can visit linktree.com/imyourmoderator. And I'll see you soon, down on the range.